slušate i kolegama koji su online. Dobro jutro i dobrodošli na radionicu u okviru EXtremeClimTwin projekta, koja je jedna već u nizu kvalitetnih i lepih radionica koje smo do sada uradili na projektu, a koja se fokusira na jačanje administrativnih kapaciteta i kapaciteta našeg naučnog i istraživačkog osoblja da bolje i kvalitetnije apliciraju na projekte iz eksternog finansiranja. Mi smo sticajem okolnosti i kako nas prilike upućuju, fokusirani na Horizon Europe program i svi naši treninzi su do sada mahom bili fokusirani na to kako da povučemo sredstva iz Horizon Europe programa. Imali smo mnogobrojne radionice do sada i ja vas rado upućujem na naš website gde su svi materijali sa dosadašnjih radionica podignuti, dostupni, moguće ih je downloadovati i možete pogledati mnogobrojne snimke sa naših do sada održanih radionica na YouTube kanalu projekta. Na jednom od slajdova u mojoj prezentaciji ja takođe navodim sve te izvore i linkujem ih, tako da izvolite slobodno se poslužiti u bilo kom trenutku. Današnja radionica je hibridna, tako da ću vas zamoliti za strpljenje ako nešto ne funkcioniše ili ako bude nekih tehničkih problema. Ako nešto sa vaše strane ne čujete dobro ili nas ne vidite, morate nam molim nas to javiti i zamolit ću vas ljubazno da chat bude naš primarni kanal komunikacije. I ja i kolege koji su danas podrška, naša IT podrška ovde, naši kolege iz projekta, smo tu da pratimo chat i da blagovremeno zamolimo govornike da odgovore na neko pitanje. Ja ću sve učesnike i u našoj ovde u sobi i vas online zamoliti da slobodno postavite pitanja. Ako vam je lakše, možete se i unmutovati i pokazati na kameri i postaviti svoje pitanje. U našem pozivnom mailu smo zamolili da svakoga ko ima profil snimanja, odnosno distribucije fotografija ili postavljanja na web sajt, da nam to blagovremeno i kaže, jer ćemo se potruditi da vaša lica obrišemo, a ako ste online, neka vam kamere u svakom trenutku budu isključene. Samo par reči o kakvom projektu je reč. EXtremeClimTwin projekat je prvi koordinatorski twinning projekat koji je došao na Matematički fakultet i koji nosi grupa sa Departmana za geografiju, turizam i hotelijerstvo. Kolege članovi tima su danas ovde i zadovoljstvo nam je što smo pored podizanja kapaciteta u hidroklimatskim ekstremima koji je fokus naučni samog projekta, dobili izvanrednu priliku da podižemo i kapacitete nastavnog, naučnog i administrativnog osoblja u veštinama koje su potrebne za podršku naučno-istraživačkim projektima. Do sada smo i nadalje ćemo sarađivati primarno sa našim partnerom iz Velike Britanije, to je Loughborough univerzitet koji je izvanredan u ovom segmentu pružanja podrške projektima i istraživačkoj delatnosti i sa nama su danas kolege sa Univerziteta Loughborough, Claire Edwards, Claire, you can wave to people, hi, and Adam Woods, koji će biti uglavnom prezenteri danas i sutra. Claire će vam predstaviti drugi deo radionice, nakon što ja predstavim kratak uvodni deo na samom programu Horizont Evropa, a Adam će imati svoje sekcije sutra, kada će nas malo bliže upoznati sa tipovima ugovora na koje ćemo morati da se naviknemo i koje koristimo u programu Horizont Evropa. Nadamo se da će radionica biti korisna, da ćete imati pitanja, da će vas podstaći na dalju aktivnost i ohrabriti da aplicirate na projekte kao što je ohrabrila i ovu našu ekipu ovde sa Prirodno-matematičkog fakulteta. Dakle, radosni smo što posle dugo vremena, ne putovanja, ne viđanja, imamo priliku da danas i ugostimo kolege iz Velike Britanije ovde, da budemo na Prirodno-matematičkom fakultetu i da održimo ovu prezentaciju i radionicu i uživo, a i da pružimo mogućnost svima vama da nam se pridružite i ja vam se zahvaljujem svima i na interesovanju, a i na izdvojenom vremenu da učestvujete. Trudit ćemo se da se u velikoj meri od 100%, ako je to moguće, držimo današnjeg rasporeda, kako biste i vi mogli da planirate svoje vreme, ali nemojte nam zameriti ako negde produžimo 2, 3, 5 minuta, što bi rekli na engleskom, please bear with us. Budite samo strpljivi sa nama i dozvolite nam da usklađujemo tehničke okolnosti. Izvoli samo se malo prijeti, ljudi vide kako je tako. Pa da nemam osjećaj sad baš. Jako je čudno, ova kamerica snima sve uglove, a u stvari je super. Ali što god bude od tehničkih stvari, molim vas, upozorite nas na to da nešto ne funkcioniše. Nadam se da smo sada svi spremni da počnemo i započet ćemo današnji dan prvom prezentacijom koja će biti kratko predstavljanje Horizon Europe programa, koji je novi program Evropske unije za istraživanje i inovacije i odnosi se na narednih 7 godina. Dakle, u narednih 7 godina imat ćemo sjajnu priliku da povučemo sredstva iz ovog programa, jer je Srbija sasvim legitimno punopravni učesnik ovog programa, zato što je pridružena zemlja članica. Dakle, ta dilema je za nas sve otklonjena zbog toga što smo, kako da kažem, kao država platili ulaznicu da se takmičimo u ovom veoma kompetitivnom programu. Imam pitanje samo za kolege, da li možemo da sklonimo ovaj deo da ostane samo prezentacija ili da pokušamo?
Sloni ga dole, eno ti tamo jedinica, eto. Ne možeš ga dati tako, to je jedino. Ne, ovo strelicu.
Ima nešto čeka. Opet se pokvario kvalitet zvuka. Da.
Meni je zvuk ok, drugima je ok.
Ajde, molim vas, stavite nam da li nas i dalje dobro čujete i da li...
U redu je.
Odlično. Ok. Ja bih sad da pokrenem slajdove.
Da, spusti samo na dole, Miko, stavi ga skroz desni ugao i to je to. Da, spusti ga na
dole. Oni to ne vide, vidimo samo mi.
Da, dole na desni, tako je, to.
Ok, odlično. Dobro. Kao što rekoh, dobrodošli ste na našu treću u nizu radionicu za podršku istraživačkoj administraciji i uopšte istraživačkoj zajednici na PMF-u, a ova srećna prilika mogućnosti da održimo hibridnu radionicu nam daje priliku i da proširimo učesnike ove radionice i nama je veoma drago zbog toga. Ovo će doista biti prezentacija koju sam ja nazvala in a nutshell, zato što bi se u horizontu moglo pričati i dugo i mnogo, jer je program izvanredno veliki, međutim, danas ćemo to svesti samo na otvaranje, uslovno rečeno, pravih mesta i pravih fioka na web sajtu Horizonta i prepoznavanje gde možete naći pozive od interesa i kako da se krećete na web sajtu i u samom programu. Dužnost mi je također da vas upozorim kakva je to vizija izvan Horizonta Evropa i da vam kažem da je odlična stvar što je Horizont Evropa zapravo nastavak programa Horizont 2020. Na našu sreću nemamo revoluciju samog programa, nego je to evolucija, dakle unapređivanje programa i olakšavanje i pristupa i učešća u samim pozivima i povlačenja finansija. Zašto smo naveli ovih 6 strateških prioriteta? Zato što su zapravo to fokalne tačke samog programa i kada budete ovu prezentaciju posle downloadovali, kada je budete gledali i gledali je u full view, svi linkovi su potpuno aktivni, jer ja zaista želim da odete na ta mesta, pogledate šta je iza tih linkova i upoznate se sa ovih 6 prioriteta. Evropa je pomalo smaknuta sa fokusa naučno-istraživačkog i iz te želje da se najbolje istraživanje i najbolji istraživači vrate u Evropu, upravo je napravljena ovakva jedna vizija iza samog programa. Dakle, cilj je vratiti najbolje istraživače u Evropu, vratiti najbolje istraživanje, podići to evropsko liderstvo u inovacijama i vratiti Evropu u taj 1% svetske naučne produkcije. Verovatno ste već do sada i čuli za ovih 6 strateških prioriteta, kao što su European Green Deal, jer smo već imali poziv iz ove oblasti i meni je drago da kažem da naš Prirodno-matematički fakultet i učestvuje u jednom Green Deal projektu. Zatim, ekonomija koja je na strani običnog čoveka, socijalna ravnopravnost, prosperitet, zatim, naravno, nešto što ćemo da uparimo sa onim Green Deal i da kažemo da govorimo o twin transitions, dakle, to su green and digital transitions. Evropa koja je digitalizovana i koja i na taj način pruža sigurnost i bezbednost i u smislu nekih, kako kažem, zaštita od terorizma, a i u smislu lične zaštite pojedinca. Promovisanje evropskog načina života. Kakvu tu Evropu želimo? Da li Evropu koja je lepa za život i koja štiti svoje građane i promoviše evropske vrednosti? Samim tim podiže se i značaj Evrope u celom svetu i naravno sve to zajedno podiže demokratiju i uopšte pravilan odnos prema demokratiji na nivou cele Evrope. Zaštititi, negovati prava svakog pojedinca na demokratski život. Ok, dakle, sve ovo, ovih 6 glavnih prioriteta će se naći u pozivima na koje ćemo mi aplicirati tokom ovog perioda od 7 godina. Dakle, moramo pročitati ova dokumenta, moramo se upoznati sa tom širom idejom, jer neće biti dovoljno samo da identifikujemo naš poziv i budemo samo u toj uskoj oblasti, nego ćemo morati da osvestimo šire strateške ciljeve, upravo ovu viziju na koju ćemo se sve vreme pozivati u tekstovima naših predloga projekata. Ono što želim da istaknem odmah na početku je da se paradigma celog impakta koje Evropska komisija želi da naši projekti proizvedu podigla na potpuno novi nivo. Dakle, impakt je dobio jedan novi, zahtevniji nivo i ovo sve zovemo impact-driven approach. Dakle, nije važno samo šta će naši projekti ostvariti u naučnom smislu za nas kao grupu, za našu instituciju, za naš neposredni naučni kolegijum i naše discipline, nego šta je to i koji je to nivo beneficija koje će rezultati našeg projekta zapravo dotaći. I tu moramo da osvestimo ova 3 osnovna nivoa i zato kažemo impact-driven approach, jer mora postojati impact, naravno naučni i tehnološki, mora postojati rezultat koji će biti dobrobit opšteg društva, kao i što bi trebalo i mora postojati neki benefit za samo društvo u smislu ekonomije, podizanja zapošljivosti, boljih poslova itd. Ova 3, kako zovemo Key Impact Pathways, imaju svoja podpolja, tako da ćete to vrlo dobro morati da osmislite, osvestite, napišete u svom predlogu projekta. Želim da kažem takođe zašto je dobro da se na nivou svoje grupe istraživačke ili kao pojedinac uopšte uključite u ove projekte. Pored izdašnog finansiranja koje je svakako tu, imat ćete priliku da započnete neko ambiciozno istraživanje, jer ovaj program je sam u vezi sa inovacijama. To ne moraju biti inovacije koje su na nivou inovacija Nikole Tesle, ali moraju malo odmicati od tog inkrementalnog istraživanja koje bi se u svakom slučaju desilo kada biste svoje istraživanje nastavljali iz godine u godinu. Krucijalni moment je mobilnost istraživača. Mobilnost internacionalna, intersektorska, interdisciplinarna i to pogotovo kroz Marija Sklodowska-Curie akcije, to ćemo vidjeti kasnije. Imaćete pristup novim mrežama koje vi donosite i koje donose vaši partneri. Imaćete pristup svetskoj istraživačkoj infrastrukturi i e-infrastrukturi također, koja pogotovo sad u ovom digitalnoj tranziciji dobija potpuno novo mesto. Imaćete priliku da započnete biznis iz svog istraživanja. Dakle, finansirane su čak i takve ideje koje su možda izgledaju potpuno neostvarljivo, ali i za takve ideje ambiciozne i inovativne postoje određeni fondovi. Dakle, u svakom slučaju i svi mi koji se bavimo fundamentalnim naukama itekako imamo svoje mesto u programu i izdašnu finansijsku podršku. Dakle, ovo su samo neki od momenta koje treba shvatiti i prepoznati kao poziv da se učestvuje u samom programu. Ako se neko seća Horizon 2020 programa, primetit ćete da struktura nije ništa značajno izmenjena i da i Horizont Evropa ima svoja 3 glavna stuba na kojima ćemo se mi danas i zadržati. Prvi stub je izvrsna nauka, kao što je to bilo i do sada. Drugi stup se odnosi na globalne izazove i podizanje evropske konkurentnosti u industriji. To jeste big deal. Dakle, ovaj drugi klaster je zaista izazov, ali ako se sećate prethodnog programa, on se odnosio na ono što smo zvali Societal Chapter. I treći stup je u potpunosti posvećen inovacijama i zove se Innovative Europe. Ako se sećate prethodnog programa i Fast and Emerging Technologies, on je sad potpuno translirao u treći stup i ovaj treći stup zapravo je nekako najusmereniji na mala i srednja preduzeća, gde mi također kao naučno-istraživačke institucije nalazimo svoje mesto, jer se očekuje da naše inovacije jednog dana možda treba da dođu na tržište i dobiju neku svoju tržišnu vrednost. Želela bih da primetite da ispod svakog stuba piše bottom up, top down, bottom up. Zašto je to važno? Provlačit će se na još nekim slajdovima. Jeste da u prvom stubu, putem ovog bottom up, dakle od ozdo na gore pristupa, osvestite da su istraživači ti koji predlažu teme svojih istraživačkih projekata. Dakle, imate slobodu. Naravno, kad kažemo da je nešto bottom up, to ne znači da nema veze ni sa čim što sam program propagira i da nema veze sa svim strateškim ciljevima programa. Naprotiv, moramo da budemo u okvirima onoga što se od nas očekuje, ali imate slobodu da sami predložite svoje istraživanje. Za razliku od drugog stuba, gde sve pomalo podsjeća na domaći zadatak, jer Evropska komisija će dati tačno šta se od nas očekuje, u kom vremenskom trajanju i kakve rezultati i kakav impact program treba da obezbedi. Treći stub je također od ozdo na gore, što je i za očekivati kada su u pitanju tako velike inovacije, nešto što zovemo research, frontier research, gde imamo potpunu slobodu da predložimo istraživanje. Skrećem pažnju također na horizontalni stup koji je za nas pogotovo važan, a mi upravo smo danas ovde zahvaljujući jednom projektu iz ovog horizontalnog stuba, jeste widening participation and strengthening the European research area, o kom ću kasnije reći još nešto. Dakle, nas će uglavnom zanimati prvi, drugi, treći stup i horizontalni stup. Idemo dalje. Mesto na koje svako mora otići, ako želi da prijavi projekat iz Horizonta Evrope, jeste naravno homepage samog programa, gde imate apsolutno sve. To je one stop shop, gde ćete naći i dokumenta, i strategije, i ovo su screenshots koje sam stavila na slajdove, ali sam htjela da prikažem koliko su učinili sve user-friendly, dakle jednostavnim i lakim za korišćenje, pa čak do te mere da su u pregledu stubova svi linkovi tu i kad odete na sajt moći ćete lako i brzo da se krećete do dokumenta koje vam trebaju. Dakle, ovo je mesto na koje svako mora otići i upoznati se. Sam budžet projekta je izuzetno veliki, negde oko 100 milijardi evra za ceo programski period, s tim što tu računamo taj osnovni deo 95,5 i plus jedan deo koji je tu, ovaj deo koji se zove Next Generation Europe, koji će biti tu do 2024. da bi se uradila ta mitigacija pomeranja iz našeg običajnog života, nauke i svega zahvaljujući pandemiji COVID-19. Dakle, možda nije loše da budete ambiciozni i u prvom trenutku kada imamo još i ovaj dodatni fond, iskoristite neke od poziva i odmah se uključite sa nekim predlogom projekta. U skladu sa prioritetom European Green Deal, gde imamo ogroman deo budžeta samo za to, 35% budžeta je samo za Evropski zeleni dogovor, primetit ćete da je i ostalo raspoređeno prilično dosta na prvi stup, 25 milijardi evra za prvi stup, zatim za Innovative Europe treći stup 13,6 milijardi evra i najmanji deo je otišao za onaj horizontalni stup, widening participation and strengthening the European research area. Budžet, iako poređen po stubovima, ne zaboravite da mora da bude uposlen da bi se ostvarili ciljevi održivog razvoja onako kako su ih postavile Ujedinjene nacije. Dakle, sad imate i onih 6 strateških ciljeva, imate već i obavezu da uključite Sustainable Development Goals i to je već neki veliki okvir gde treba da prepoznamo kakvi su nam prioriteti i na što ćemo se pozvati u svojim istraživačkim projektima. Svi linkovi su aktivni u prezentaciji, kad je budete downloadovali, moći ćete da odete na pravo mesto. Idemo na stubove koji su nam ti stubovi nosači samog projekta. Prvi je izvrsna nauka i to je zapravo mesto gde možda ima i najviše prostora za fundamentalna istraživanja. I to pogotovo u European Research Council i Risk of Security Actions. To su projekti namenjeni individualnim istraživačima uglavnom i to naročito European Research Council. Kod Maja Curie akcija imamo i individualne projekte, a imamo i neke projekte koji zahtevaju konzorciju. U European Research Council je važno da kažemo da se očekuju izuzetno inovativni projekti, dakle ono što zovemo frontier research. Šta znači granično istraživanje uopšte? Da ne budemo samo na toj frazi frontier research. To znači, ok, imamo fundamentalno istraživanje, ali je toliko inovativno da će njegov impakt i to novo znanje koje se proizvodi biti pomeriti granice onoga što je sada trenutno znanje u oblasti i samim tim proizvesti potpuno inovaciju i neki high impact koji se očekuje kod ovog prvog stupa. Podsjećam da se radi o pristupu bottom up, dakle odabir tema dolazi od samih istraživača. U okviru Marijinsko-Oskar Curie akcija nalazi se konkretno doctoral networks, dakle mreža doktorskih studija. Zašto? Zato što želimo da kroz ovakve projekte proizvedemo mlade istraživače koji su sposobni da se takmiče na globalno konkurentnom tržištu. Dakle, zašto? Zato što želimo da univerziteti postanu mesta koja su povezana sa preduzetništvom, koja su povezana sa drugim sektorima. Primetit ćete kroz ceo program da je cilj intersektorsko, internacionalno, interdisciplinarno povezivanje na nivou akademija, industrija, nevladin sektor i tako dalje i tako dalje. Treći sud je Research Infrastructure, gde su u pitanju projekti i pozivi koji omogućavaju globalno korišćenje postojeće istraživačke infrastrukture i e-infrastrukture. Tako da, kroz ovaj projekat, na primer, recimo mi nemamo ovde sad neki aparat ili neku mašinu, ali ovakvim projektima će pristup takvim aparatima ili nekom elektronskom mikroskopu tamo negdje u Nemačkoj biti dozvoljen i našim istraživačima. Tako da za individualne istraživače i za fellowships projekte ostajemo na liniji European Research Council i Marijinsko-Oskar Curie Actions. Ja ću iskoristiti priliku da kažem sada da se za sva pitanja dodatna, pošto ne idemo u širinu u ovoj prezentaciji, možete obratiti kasnije mailovima i na projekat i na moj lični mail, jer sam nacionalna kontakt osoba i za European Research Council i za Marine Security Actions. Dakle, slobodno postavite pitanja, danas ne možemo ići mnogo u širinu. Na sledećim slajdovima samo dajem link na Evropski istraživački savet, na dolazne pozive, jer, nažalost, ovaj trenutno otvoreni poziv je samo za one istraživače koji su već implementirali Evropski istraživački savet neki od tih projekata, tako da ne prepoznajem da ovde imamo takve ljude danas, ali bit će kad jednom dobijete. Tako da vas pre zanima ovaj kalendar dolaznih poziva i zapamtimo da su svi pozivi uglavnom na godišnjoj bazi, znači svake godine se ponavljaju i to obično bude u istim terminima. Tako da ćete već moći da prepoznajete taj kalendar kada se pozivi ponavljaju. Isto to sam priredila i za Marija Slavovske akcije uz napomenu da su 2 poziva već otvorena. Prvi je spomenuti poziv za Doctoral Networks, gde pravimo doktorske studije zajedno sa sektorom van akademije, i drugi su Postdoctoral Fellowships koji su namenjeni istraživačima u tih 8 godina karijere nakon sticanja doktorata, koji žele da svoje istraživanje rade na nekoj instituciji domaćinu u Evropi. Tako da su 2 otvorena, Staff Exchanges se otvara 6. oktobra, tako da i tu dižemo onako zastavicu da bi to mogli biti pozivi interesantni za nas. Drugi stup se za ove Global Challenges in European Industrial Competitiveness i potpuno je jasno da se radi o kolaborativnim projektima koji zahtevaju intersektorsku, cross-sektorsku, interdisciplinarnu i internacionalnu saradnju. Međutim, ovde imamo drugačiji pristup. Dakle, Evropska komisija će nam dati domaći zadatak koji ćemo morati da rešimo i pokažemo da smo mu dorasli. Kao što vidite, ovih 6 klastera, tako su povređeni tematski prioriteti u okviru drugog stuba, oni jesu klasteri svaki za sebe, ali to nisu neprobojne celine. Dakle, svi klasteri su međusobno propulzivni i dešava se da jedna tema nalazi mesto i u jednom i u drugom i u trećem. Dajem primer za to. Ako pravimo projekat iz oblasti health, što je sasvim moguće, pa sigurno ćemo tu uključiti i neku digitalizaciju i neku veštačku inteligenciju. Dakle, ne posmatramo ove klastere kao, previše englesko reći, silos, nego ih posmatramo kao definisane celine, ali međusobno zavisne, kolaborativne i tako i treba da posmatramo ceo program. Naravno da svih 6 klastera doprinose u svojoj konačnici u svakom trenutku ostvarivanju ciljeva održivog razvoja Ujedinjenih nacija. Drugi stup će se implementirati kroz uobičajene pozive na koje smo već navikli, ali će svakako biti inkorporirani i u misije, što i jeste jedna od glavnih novina samog programa. Upućujem vas da pročitate strategiju implementacije programa Horizont Evropa, koju sam linkovala na ovom slajdu, da možete da stalno imate tu koheziju kad pišete predlog projekta, da se stalno pozivate zašto nešto radite, zato što je u vezi sa tim i tim, pa ćete imenovati te strateške prioritete, pa ćete se referisati baš na konkretne delove. Shvatate, do sada imali ste projekat da uopšte ne možemo da imamo zamagljen predlog projekta. Predlog projekta mora da bude jasan, mora da se referiše na vrlo jasno postavljene ciljeve u samom pozivu i šire u ovim strateškim dokumentima. Dakle, klasteri, svaki od klastera imaće svoje subprioritete i svoje pozive koji su u okviru te tematske celine. Želim da skrenem pažnju i da posebno izdvojim ciljeve održivog razvoja kao obavezu u našim projektima, jer iako ih ima samo 17, ima preko 160 indikatora na koje se možemo pozivati i ovaj slajd lepo ilustruje na šta se određeni klasteri referišu kada to provedemo u ciljeve održivog razvoja. Pogledajte slajd kasnije pa ćete moći da nađete tu korisnu vezu. Spomenula sam misije, Na njima se neću mnogo zadržavati jer ćemo danas upravo razmontirati, da tako kažem, jedan proziv upravo iz misija, to će uraditi kasnije naša koleginica Claire, ali ću vam reći, znači ona će biti, pozivi će biti uglavnom programirani u okviru drugog stuba i u okviru klastera, međutim i u svim ostalim delovima programa. Misije su u potpunosti skoncentrisane i zasnovane na učešću građana. Dakle, ovdje ćemo najviše imati citizen science, imat ćemo taj moment co-creation i co-programming, već ste verovatno i čuli te reči, gde će nam građani biti i na početku, kada osvešćujemo koje su potrebe i kakav impact treba da bude, i u tom kontrol modelu da li stvari radimo dobro, da li možemo da apsorbujemo taj nivo inovacija i na kraju samog ciklusa kada je inovacija tu, kada je proizvod tu, kada je rešenje tu i da vidimo kako se zapravo on apsorbuje među običnim svetom. Dakle, možda najviše u celom programu kroz misije ćemo imati učešće samih građana. Misije su poređene ovih 5 prioritetnih područja. Prepoznaćete da su to sve manje više slični ili isti prioriteti celog ovog programa i to su zapravo gorući problemi. Tako da na sledećem slajdu dajem mogućnost da prođete i pogledate koji su prioriteti, kako misije izgledaju i kako su oročene, jer iako su jako široke i dozvoljavaju slobodu predloga projekata, misije su oročene konkretno, ovi prvi pozivi na period do 2030. godine, kada se očekuje rezultat tako jednog širokog poziva kakav misija nudi. Treći stup inovativna Evropa je predodređen za inovacije. Predodređen je za to povezivanje akademskog i industrijskog sektora i za veoma ambiciozne projekte. Kada govorimo o inovacijama, ovde su u pitanju inovacije koje zovemo i disruptivnim inovacijama. Dakle, to je potpuno, to su inovacije koje su game changers. Menjaju pogled na dosadašnji problem i nude potpuno novo rešenje. Dakle, u ovim projektima možete da date mašti na volju. Komisija, ako prepozna da je to rešenje ili ideja vredna pažnje, za to postoje izdašna finansijska sredstva. Dakle, od ideje i nula tehnološke spremnosti, nivoa tehnološke razvijenosti, do samog rešenja koje kroz neko vreme dolazi na tržište. Dakle, sreće i ovde je u pitanju bottom-up pristup i sami predlažemo temu istraživanja. Imate neka 3 mehanizma, to je Evropski istraživački savet, Evropski inovacioni savet, koji je u potpunosti namenjen malim i srednjim preduzećima u saradnji sa akademijom. Imamo Evropski inovacione ekosisteme i imamo Evropski institut za inovaciju i tehnologije, gde je konkretno PMF već povukao neka sredstva, a koji služi za spajanje akademije, biznisa i malih i srednjih preduzeća, odnosno pomaže da se ljudi iz akademije treniraju i dobiju te neophodne veštine kako bi njihova istraživanja kao inovacije izašla na tržište. Samo ću izdvojiti Evropski inovacioni savet, zato što imamo divnu priliku kroz Pathfinder, Transition Accelerator da jednu svoju ideju izguramo od početka do kraja. Konkretno kod Accelerator poziva imamo mogućnost da premostimo taj jaz između ideje i do komercijalizacije. Za to postoji ova tranziciona faza, a Pathfinder projekti su baš projekti kad krećemo od nule, kad imamo samo ideju i stvarno kaže sama reč, tražimo put kako da ta ideja dođe do tržišta ili da podignemo nivo tehnološke spremnosti. Dakle, u pitanju su zaista inovacije, u pitanju su inovacije koje menjaju način rada, razmišljanja, pogleda na problem do sada i njihov izlazak na tržište. Znači, ceo taj innovation cycle je ovde podržan. Ako se sećate horizontalnog stuba, to je proširenje učešća i širenje izvrsnosti. To su pozivi koji su, već možda i prepoznajete neke od njih, Teaming, Twinning, Excellence Hubs, ERA Chairs, ERA Fellowships. To su pozivi gde je Srbija prilično uspešna, pogotovo kad govorimo o twinning i teaming projektima. U ovim pozivima Evropska komisija daje šansu da se institucije iz zemalja koje su widening countries, za koje imaju slabije postignuće u nauci i istraživanju, upare i uče od svojih partnera koji su leaders in areas, dakle, koji imaju bolje rezultati, koji su uglavnom etablirane institucije, istraživači iz zemalja članica Evropske unije, zajedno sa njima, transferom znanja i mi podignemo sopstvene kapacitete. Dakle, cilj je da se widening countries kao low research performers približe ovima koji su high research performers i da se nekako ujednači ta produkcija, impakt koji postižu i jedni i drugi. Link je aktivan i možete tu pristupiti samim pozivima. Veliko mi je zadovoljstvo da kažem da je PMF do sada dobio 3 twinning projekta. Jedan je ovaj zbog kog se danas nalazimo ovde, EXtremeClimTwin. 2 kreću u avgustu, odnosno septembru ove godine, jako smo srećni i ponosni i kad podignemo kapacitete, bit ćemo super. Tako da ću vas pozvati da i kolege online, naravno, da pratite radionice koje će tek biti na našim projektima, ova 2 koja nam kreću, kako biste zajedno sa nama rasli, osnaživali svoje kapacitete za apliciranje.
Čekaj, izvini Goga, došlo je do prekida. Kaže, sekund, a ostali? Sve je u redu, može nastaviti. Izvini.
Sve okej.
Sve okej, može dalje.
Hvala, ja znam da ste čuli ovo male reči hvale, koristimo priliku što smo na PMF-u da pohvalimo sami sebe. Danas to možemo. Ok, dakle, pratite i dalje šta se dešava na našim projektima koji su u toku i koji kreću od avgusta, odnosno septembra ove godine. Kako vi možete da učestvujete? Možete da učestvujete kao individualni istraživači, prvi stup, setimo se, ili da to budu kolaborativni projekti, setimo se drugog stupa. Šta treba da uradite i odakle možete da počnete? Na ovom slajdu vam dajem korisne izvore informacija, korisne izvore gde nađete pozive. Kontaktirajte nacionalne kontakt osobe koje u Srbiji postoje za svaki od podprograma Horizonta Evropa. Dakle, to su ljudi koji su kao ja na fakultetu ili većina njih se nalazi u Ministarstvu prosvete, nauke i tehnološkog razvoja. Javite nam da imate ideju, javite nam kakva je ideja, porazgovarajmo o toj ideji, daćemo vam smernice, daćemo vam mnogo korisnih dokumenta i tu smo, kao nacionalne kontakt osobe, budemo tokom stvaranja vaše projektne aplikacije. Ono gde izuzetno insistiram da odete kad se završi ova radionica, kad budete još sveži, jeste Funding and Tender portal, koji je sveobuhvatni portal gde se nalaze ne samo pozivi, svi pozivi koji su zatvoreni, koji su otvoreni, koji će tek doći u nekom narednom periodu, nego i konkretna, korisna dokumenta. Pre svega tu mislim na radne programe, jer se radni program, i to nam je neko obavezno štivo iz kog su nam izdvojeni pozivi na koje apliciramo. Dakle, radni program daje taj kontekst iz kog su izvedeni topics, to su zapravo ti pozivi na koje mi apliciramo i zato je važno da se kroz reference documents, želim da naglasim da na tom mestu možete da skidete sve radne programe, upoznate se sa svim tekućim dokumentima u programu i bolje informišete, pogotovo kada se tek spremate da aplicirate za nešto. Dakle, unapred možete da vidite i kako izgleda evaluacija, i šta su prioriteti programa, i kako izgleda vaša projektna aplikacija, da to ne bude prvi put kad se tamo online logujete da tek tada vidite. Dakle, na nama je sva odgovornost planiranja unapred, a ovaj program je omogućio da se to doista može i desiti. Takođe, toplo preporučujem da odete na EXtremeClimTwin Resources, dakle na resurse ovog projekta na našem web sajtu i YouTube kanalu, poskidate prezentacije koje smo do sada imali, možete da poslušate i snimke sa sesija, tako da ima mnogo načina, ja vas stvarno ohrabrujem da se aktivno uključite u to i da iskoristite sve ono što već postoji, jer se stvarno dobro možemo pripremiti za svaki od narednih poziva. Naravno, Horizont Europa i kao i prethodni program ima čitavu sekciju na web sajtu koja se zove Frequently Asked Questions, gde imate more pitanja odgovorenih od strane Evropske komisije. Dakle, to su onda ti pravi odgovori. I pre nego što krenete u raspitivanje okolo, moj toplo savjet je da potražite se odgovor na svoje pitanje tamo, jer će velika je verovatnoća da ćete ga tamo i naći. U ovom trenutku ja se zahvaljujem na pažnji. Upućujem vas da se slobodno obratite sa pitanjima i na e-mail adresu projekta i na ličnu e-mail adresu. Naravno, opet na ovaj izvanredno koristan resurs kakav je naš web sajt. Hvala vam na pažnji kolegama u sobi i kolegama online i slobodno postavite u pitanje. Ja ću sada obratiti pažnju na chat, pa ćemo, bit ću tu svakako da odgovorim na bilo koje pitanje sad ili kasnije. Ako smo svi spremni, možemo nastaviti dalje sa prezentacijom naše drage koleginice Claire Edwards, koleginice sa Loughborough Obesity, koja će nastaviti sa centralnim ipak delom današnjeg rada, a to je Horizon Europe Proposal Development i sve one korisne stvari koje moramo da znamo da bismo dobro postavili jedan projekat. Claire, the floor is yours. Cool. I think we're going to just give everyone 5 minutes.
Kristina Ostojić, ja ne znam da li je podigla ruku da postavi pitanje. Ili je samo aplauz bio.
Could you please just tell me which is where the presentation is on desktop or where it is?
Na desktopu ovog računara. Ok, 2-3 hvala. 2-3 minuta pauze, samo da podignemo prezentaciju od Claire.
Niko poziva i snimanje. Ne možeš, ajde.
Ne možeš, posle možemo sve.
Boravit ćemo. Nećemo da stojimo.
Ne znam se da li viško. Ste me sad čuju i video? Vidimo. Dragi kolege koji učestvujete online, neki delovi radionice, kako sam i naglasila u pozivu, su malo više primereni za kolege koji su ovde u sobi. Međutim, super je ako budete učestvovali aktivno sa vaše strane i radili sve vežbe i ako će nam biti važan feedback i vaša pitanja, da će biti nekih interaktivnih rečenica od 50 minuta gde će se očekivati nešto. Tako da, samo da vas niste sa nama u sobi, nećemo mesti da pratite odabrani poziv, jer ćemo raditi na konkretnom pozivu i da radite te vežbice koje smo predvideli i da nam, zašto da ne pružite svoj feedback, iako ste sa druge strane kamere, da se uključite, postavite pitanje ili kažete šta je rezultat vaše vežbe koje ste uradili. Mnogo će nam značiti da vas čujemo i da vam pomognemo sa konkretnim odgovorima na pitanje.
Keyboard. Ready to go.
Poslednje, snima. Da. Snima.
Ima se mikrofon na slava. Ok, kolegi, nastavljamo. The floor is yours, Claire.
Cool. Okay, so thank you, everyone. We're running this workshop as part of our Work Package 1 activity. We were supposed to originally come to Serbia a year ago, maybe? A year ago to work on this, but with the delightful pandemic that we've all been through, we've had to delay it. But I just wanted to say thank you. It's been a brilliant trip so far, and I never knew Serbia would be so hot, to be honest. It's been quite an experience, but it's a really lovely place, and you've all been so welcoming. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Right, so an introduction first. So most of you have probably met me already, but if not, I'll just give a quick overview, particularly people online that might not know me. So my name is Claire Edwards. I work at Loughborough University in the UK, and I'm really not sure what to look. Is that camera video as well? Okay. I'll probably look this way. I started working in research funding in 2008, so I've got a lot of experience with both EU funding, but also national funding as well. So I've had quite a long time of working in that space. My current job is I'm a research development manager, and that means I work with our academic colleagues at the university to help them access funding, and that can be UK funding or European funding. It really varies depending on what it is they want to do. I work with our environmental science research, which is why I'm involved in this project, because Professor Rob Wilby is one of the academics that I work with. But I also support our School of Science, so our physics, chemistry, computer science, those colleagues as well. Yeah, that's probably all about me. My colleague Adam's here as well, so I'll let him introduce himself to you, but you'll hear more from him before I think.
Hi, so likewise, you've probably mostly met me before, but my name's Adam Wood. I'm a research contract manager at Loughborough at the moment, so I deal with all the contractual arrangements for the projects that we obtain. So that can be contracting with funders, that can be setting up collaboration agreements with the partners we have on the project. And prior to moving into that role, which was just over 2 years ago, I worked in the costing and pricing support function. So that was developing budgets in order to submit them when the project was applied for. I think that's, like Claire said, you'll be hearing from me a bit more about contracts tomorrow, but I'll hand it back to Claire now.
Cool, thanks Adam. So I hope you're ready to do a little bit of work today, because I'm not just going to talk about you for the next 4 hours. I'm going to get you guys to actually do some activities which hopefully will be useful for you when going forwards. So this is what we're going to cover today. So we're running a little bit late. Gabe was very enthusiastic about Horizon Europe, which is great and how it should be. So that's all fine. So the things that I'm going to cover today is we're going to have a look at how to read a funding call and how to understand what the funder is looking for. We're going to look at how to define the concepts and methodology once you understand what the pool is looking for, and how to formulate your objectives for your project as well and how that works. We'll take a break and then we're going to look at how to build those objectives into a set of work packages, and how to keep the proposal really cohesive, because these are quite big documents and they can be quite challenging to kind of link everything together. So hopefully by doing that, you'll understand clearly how to do that. We'll take a longer break for people to have a bite to eat, or if they want to go for a walk or whatever you decide you want to do. And then we're going to do a bit more of an interactive session on thinking about timelines and work plans for proposals. Finally, we're going to look at the types of things that are needed before you submit your proposal, this is a checklist about what's needed, and thinking about how you work with partners to develop your project. So how the ways you can work with them, but also how to help manage that process. So hopefully that will be useful. Please feel free to interrupt me at any point with any questions. If I say something that you don't understand, for the people online, if you type in your chat, if you have any questions, then my colleagues will very kindly pick that up and ask them with you. So try and make the most of this, and let's keep it interactive, and hopefully it'll be useful for you as well. So I was going to show you first of all the funding and tenders portal. So probably I can either share the screen for it, or I can maybe put the link in the chat for people to use it.
Yeah,
That's probably the best thing to do.
chat.
Yeah, so I have shown this in another webinar, so if you want to know how to use it more comprehensively, you can have a look on the YouTube channel for the project, and I ran a whole webinar about how to use the portal online. But what you can do is you can search for a particular topic. So for me, for today, I searched for a topic on climate change, and it gave me all the funding opportunities that relate to climate change. And that's how you can find your funding opportunities. Once you've found one you're interested in, it will open up a whole web page with all the information about the call, and that's what I'm going to go through this morning. So we're going to look at how to break down a call. I've got an example one that we're going to have a look at, so hopefully you can see clearly how that's done. And I've got it printed off here, so you can have a look at it in the room, and online. Somebody will send you the link to the call when she's finished over there. So the first thing is thinking about what's in that call and what the important information is. So all the important information you need to know about is in that call document. And this includes things like the total budget available for that particular call and the maximum budget available per project. Now, this is really important because you can see how many projects they're likely to fund. So if the total budget available for the call is 5 million, but they're willing to fund projects up to 2.5 million, you know they're probably going to fund 2 projects. So it is important to have a look at this because it gives you an indication of how many projects are likely to be funded. It contains information about the deadline, and this is really important because when the system hits the deadline, it closes. You can't submit late, and you need to check it properly. I've had a recent example where an academic uploaded a wrong document right at the last minute, and it was rejected by the EU, and it wasn't successful. So it's very important to make sure you give yourself enough time. I'll talk about contingency time later. The expected project outcomes are listed on here as well, so the types of things that they're expecting your project to achieve. The scope of the call, so the types of things they're looking for. And then the most important part is any specific requirements that are specific to that particular funding opportunity. So there might be things like focusing on specific countries. There's been a recent move towards working with countries, let's say in Africa or India, and there might be a requirement to include a partner from India, for example. There might be a requirement to work with specific types of partners like local authorities or planners or that kind of thing. So make sure you check that as well. There might be a need to include specific disciplines such as social sciences into the project. And there might be information about the types of activities that are important to the project as well. So they're expecting you to include specific workshops with certain groups of people and stakeholders. And finally, there's also further down, there's the background and reasoning behind the call and why it's been developed and why that funding opportunity is there. And it usually creates links to some kind of white paper that the EU has or a policy document. And it is important to read those to really understand the background behind why that funding call is there and online. Okay, so I picked a funding opportunity today for us to have a look at. It's linked to climate change, so I thought it would be appropriate. So I've printed off some copies, so we'll pass those around. So it might be easy to have a look at it while we run through. As people online, I think we're going to send you a link to the call. Yeah.
User-driven application for regional and local authorities. Daj mi link da pošaljem na chat.
Što ću ga kopirati?
Okay.
I will post it on the chat.
Perfect, thank you.
Just a second.
Wait for that to be passed around.
Hvala. Just a second. Here we go.
Okay, great. So hopefully everyone online's got that link now. You can click on it and have a look at the call document while we go through it on the screen. I have everything I've put in the slides is directly taken from the core document. So if you can't open it, you can't see it, don't worry, it will all be on the screen as well. But I wanted to share this with you because it gives you a really good idea of what the call looks like when you open it up and the types of things to look for. So the first thing that I think is important on here is all the main information that you need to know initially is on here. So you can see, for example, that it runs a research and innovation action. So there are 3 types of funding that exist in the standard European Commission funding. We have coordination and support actions, which is like the EXtremeClimTwin project, which is a project that looks at building capacity and networking. We have research and innovation actions, which is this type of project, where it's expected to be a mix of fundamental research and then moving it towards being more applied. And then finally, there are what are called innovation actions, which are typically a much higher technology readiness level. So the types of projects that we're looking at developing something to potentially take it to the market or change policy or that type of work. You can see at the bottom left, it's a single stage submission, and this is really important because some studies have a 2-stage submission where you submit a smaller application for the first stage, and if you're successful in getting through the first stage, then you develop your full application for the second stage. But this one is a single stage proposal, and it's important to notice that. It mentions the opening date, so that's the day where all the call information has become available. It might be, if you're really on it and you're really focused, you've actually already found this in some of the draft work programmes, which may have been made available to you. However, they can change, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little bit, right up until the call opens. And then the most important part on the bottom right is the deadline, which you can see there, and they always close at 5 o'clock Brussels time, which I believe is the same as Serbian time, so you're very lucky. In the UK, that's 4 o'clock, so we get an hour less to write our application, so it's a bit tricky sometimes. But as I say, at that time it closes, you cannot edit or do anything with your application, it is done. So I really strongly recommend you never submit your proposal on that day, you do it before. Okay, so if we look at the call document, you can see that there are a number of outcomes that are expected for projects that apply to this particular scheme. And the most important thing is to recognise for this particular one, projects are expected to contribute to all of these outcomes. Sometimes it might say projects are expected to contribute to 3 or at least one of these outcomes. So it's important to check the wording carefully. But for this particular one, we're expected to contribute to all of the outcomes. So you're going to have to make sure you respond to all of these things and make sure that your project is working towards those. So for example, the first one is about climate data and making sure that there's better access to this information and supporting that. And making sure that it's combined with locally sourced data, and that there's safeguarding of developed solutions by building kind of infrastructure to make sure that it's about legacy, it's making sure that this stuff is available long term and not just for the purpose of the project. But yeah, I mean, I won't read them all out to you. You can see them there on the screen. And I think one of the important things that jumped out at me here as well is you have to have demonstrated application in at least 5 European regions or communities. So that's going to be a really important thing to think about when developing a response to this particular scheme. So what I recommend you do when you're at this point is I always pull together a table like this. Now it's a table you can put in your proposal later if you decide you want to do so, but even if you don't put it in the proposal, it's a really useful planning document, I find. Although I think we put it in the EXtremeClimTwin proposal, and I've always put it in proposals, but it's not necessarily a requirement. So what I tend to do is each of those expected outcomes that we have here, I'll put in this table on the left-hand column. And then in the right-hand side, I'll really think how my project is going to achieve those outcomes. And it might be a list of bullet points. It might just be some ideas at this point about how my particular project will achieve that. So for example, let's talk about the last one here, which is demonstrating at least 5 EU regions. So, oh, sorry, wrong way. So I need to have a think, which 5 EU regions do I think would be most appropriate for my project? Should it be 5, should it be 7? Why? Which are the regions that I should work with, which countries and why? So even if you don't have those nailed down right at an early stage, it gets you thinking about those regions, and then that then influences who your partners might need to be later down the line. So this is a nice early stage planning tool, in my opinion. And also try and be as specific as you can, particularly once you've developed this further, because it helps make sure that your project is really well aligned to the core, and it really demonstrates to the funder that you understand what they're looking for and that you've developed a project that responds and will meet those outcomes. So it is good practice to put a table like this in the proposal, I think, but it's also a really, really great planning tool as well. So the version you have on day one when you start thinking about your project idea will probably be very different from the one you actually put in your application. Okay, all this is a bit small, but hopefully you've got it printed out so you can see it. So there's a particular scope for this project, and it relates to one of the missions that Gordana was talking about earlier. So the missions, this one sits under the climate change mission, but it also sits under a specific work programme as well. So they're kind of, but also I think it gets a bit more complicated EU funding in this respect. So it says where it sits, it relates to a mission. It's about understanding climate change risk. It supports an objective of the mission of supporting at least 150 European regions and communities. So by supporting 5 in one of these projects, it's working toward this 150 number. And it talks about what the expectations are. So the expectation here is that the successful proposal will develop new technologies. So whatever you do in this project, you're going to have to develop new technologies, and that needs to be one of your outcomes and deliverables. And those technologies need to address access to climate data and information services. They need to be user-defined and user-friendly. So these are really key words you can really pull out when you think about the expertise that you're going to need to respond to this, and the objectives you're going to need to develop, and what type of work needs to happen. We've got regional and community level applications. So you could look at one or the other, or potentially both. So it's important to think about that as well. For adaptation to climate change, and it's about building climate resilience in all sectors or services. So again, it's very, very broad, but which ones are you going to focus on specifically for your project and why? And you've just got to be able to justify it. So for example, we've decided to focus on construction, because construction is really heavily impacted by climate change. It impacts the soil, the air quality, it makes building more difficult. People are building in areas that might flood, that might be impacted by climate change. So as long as you can justify why you're focusing on a specific sector, it's absolutely fine. You just need to be very clear why, but then also explain how what you do with that sector might be transferable or applicable to another one. So it's all a bit like having a case study to focus on for a project that can then be transferable elsewhere. Okay, so that's that part. So that's the scope. Then we have proposals need to address all of the following, and we have a lot of bullet points here. So I won't spend hours and hours on this, but what I'm just going to do is run through the bullet points and pick out what I think are the key points and that you need to be able to demonstrate when you write a proposal. So this is about data manipulation tools. So there's clearly an emphasis on actually developing tools as part of this project. So you need to make sure you have the capability and capacity and objectives around developing tools. So that's the focus there. Thinking about impact of climate change on key community systems. So that's what I sort of mentioned about picking a sector as an example, but also several climate regions. So several climate regions to me sticks out as a key point. So we're not just talking about, for example, Southeast European region here. We're talking about maybe comparing different regions. So we might want to look at somewhere in the north of Europe, somewhere in the south, to really kind of compare the impact. And they want to develop a gap analysis. So that's a more general thing. If you've got the expertise, you can do that. But then it also mentions user needs. So building up user understanding of users, both at a regional and community level. And thinking about training and capacity building. So those are clearly going to be important elements, whatever project's developed here. And then adapted for non-experts. So this is talking about when you do your 5 regions in your project, how are you going to be able to expand that after the end of the project to a wider number of regions, but perhaps even towards the end of the project, not just afterwards. This one's quite a big one, I felt. So thinking about what other data's already there. So there is a lot of data there from things like Copernicus, other European funded projects. How are you going to work with those? And this is a really key element of proposal development, is an awareness of other European Commission funded programs that relate to what it is you want to do, because you can talk about how you're going to connect those projects, access their data potentially, and build on what they've done. And that's something that evaluators really love. Okay, so linking climate change indicators to socio-economic and demographic data, public authorities and mission end users. So who are those public authorities? Who are those mission end users? And this is what I say, you might need to then go, okay, who are the mission end users? Go back to the mission documents, read the objectives in there and try and understand what types of users they're talking about. So it's not just a case of looking at this individual call document as a standalone item. It's a case of potentially going back to other documents that relate to it. And that's what makes it complicated, I think. It's not just all enclosed in one document. Okay, so we also want hazards in here as well. Now that didn't come up before, so this is an important point. And multiple hazards, complex cascading disasters. So this is new from what came up earlier. And there's it talks about the activities set out in the topic. So you can have a look at those and figure out which ones they mean, but also trying to understand what those disasters might be in the regions that you're looking at. And maybe if you want to focus on specific things, flooding, you pick regions that are particularly prone to that issue. So this really guides where you might want to focus the research project as well on a European scale. So we have some nice guidance here as well from the Commission around climate proofing of infrastructure. So again, this is another document you need to go away and have a look at before you really firm up your idea. And it points you to specific elements of that document as well. So that's 2 other documents you need to read before you start progressing into proposal further. Providing coordination between the targeted regions or communities with their data and overlaps and synergies and potential cost sharing opportunities. There might be an interest in accessing some local funding to fund specific elements of this project as well, rather than just getting it all from the European Commission. Solutions need long-term viability. So this is a really important point for all funding, I think. It's not just about delivering a project and then putting it in a folder and putting it on a shelf. The European Commission wants to see that you've kind of done something really cool and that and how it's going to move forward, particularly beyond the funding. They don't just want to invest in stuff that once the project's done, it's done. They want to see everything building on it as time goes on. I think this is really important. So we've got our local communities, local stakeholders in a particular region. So this clearly you're going to need local partners. There's no getting away with this. This isn't just one person project. This is really going to have quite a big partnership, I'd imagine. The biggest one I've personally worked on had 42 partners, and it was horrific. And we've got one at Loughborough that I think it's got 175 partners, and I have no idea. It's a project with Africa, so it's looking at lots of different partners in Africa, getting them working with Europe more. But I've never seen anything like it. It's just crazy. So think about your structure. So, where it's clear it's going to be quite a big project, the coordinator doesn't need to coordinate everything. It might be you have regional coordinators. So you might have a coordinator for each of the regions that you're working with. So these points are really important when you're thinking about your project structure and how it might all fit together. I'm now going, don't apply for this funding, it sounds really complicated. So again, I do a table like this. So go through all those points again, put them in a table and really detail how your project's going to meet that, I've written outcome here, sorry, that aspect of what they're looking for. And again, be really specific, be really clear how are you going to meet that outcome, or at the early stages, what ideas do you have for kind of trying to work towards what their expectations are. So that's what I do anyway, when I look at a funding call and try and break it down and try and really understand what they're looking for, because unless you've been sat in a room with the European Commission when they rate these work programmes, you're going to have very little idea or you sit on an advisory brief or something into the European Commission. You're not going to know where this came from or why they came up with this particular call. So it's really important to try and understand it as much as you can before you start writing. Then even more stuff after that. So they've got some really specific aspects that they want for this funding. So they've now decided actually, yeah, we want 5 regions, but we also actually now have decided we want highly vulnerable regions or communities. So you've gone from thinking of 5 regions, okay, maybe we can have a bit of Serbia and a bit of Norway. No, we now need vulnerable regions. We need to understand whether vulnerable means vulnerable communities or vulnerable to climate change. What is it that's meant by vulnerable? National contact points can be really helpful actually. If you're not quite sure how to read the call, you can get in touch with them and ask questions. They might not know the answer, but sometimes they might, so it's worth talking to them. Okay, and the other bit I picked out on here is you've got to have national and regional governments involved in selecting your regions and communities. And they want you to provide letters of support from these as an annex to the proposal. Now that's really unusual because you can't usually provide letters of support as part of the European Commission proposal. But they want it here, so that's something to really recognise nice and early that you're going to need those. Because I don't know how it is in Serbia, but this can take a really long time in the UK. And I know it can in Spain and Italy as well. So it's important to make progress on that nice and quickly. We've talked about replication already, but it's mentioned further down. And there's a bit about how you're going to ensure meaningful engagement with local communities and stakeholders. And this is where I talk about maybe having local coordinators. But the scale of this is like totally different from what we do in our project. So I think scales of projects are important to recognise. And the last part is you've got to have a social science and humanities discipline as part of this project. So you can't just go, yeah, science is going to fix it all. We've got to have social sciences in there as well. And that's really important. And it can't just be bolted on the side. It's got to be really embedded in the research that you're doing. And the last bit was that there's going to be some events that the European Commission are going to do because they want to have a network of all projects that are funded under the mission. So it's an expectation that you need to make sure you put provisions in your resource and budget to be able to contribute towards this mission. So it's not just your travel and coordination for the project, but it goes a little bit beyond that as well. So I suspect we'll start seeing this type of thing a little bit more if people are applying for funding under similar missions. But it's, this is hidden right at the end of the document. Unless you really read it all and go through it all really thoroughly, you wouldn't necessarily pick this up. So it's quite tricky, I think, to spot all these things and then make sure you build them all into your proposal. It's quite challenging. So I'll talk about checklists later. And this is something I haven't said. Sometimes it's worth pulling out these key points and having a list of them so you can go, yeah, I've definitely done all those things at the end before you submit. Okay, so that's that. We've got a very quick 5-minute break if anyone wants anything to eat or drink or a quick comfort break or a stretch or whatever it is you need. So just for 5 minutes or so.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all right. So maybe 25 past.
Yeah.
Great, okay.
BMI.
So people online have got an option here of we can either put you in a breakout room to do the discussion, or you can stay online and listen to what's going on in the room. It's up to you really how you want to do it. Or can you click on the slide? No, come back. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about developing your concept and methodology for your project and how to do it. So there are a few steps that need to take place at this point. So we've gone through what we need to do to understand the call. Once you really, really understand that, you can start developing your concept, your aims, what it is you want to achieve. So what is the overall focus of the project? You've been given a brief by the EU, but you need to respond to that in some way. And every project is going to be different in response to that. They're not going to all do the same thing. They're not going to focus on the same regions. So what is your focus of the project? Where are you going to work? What is it you're going to do? What pieces of work, i.e. work packages or tasks, might be required to undertake that work? What partners do you already have to do some of that work? What do you potentially need? Where are the gaps? What can you do yourself as an organisation? And who do you need to bring in for other aspects of it? And obviously this is more complicated for bigger, more complex proposals and more straightforward with smaller, simpler ones. So EXtremeClimTwin only has 4 partners, which makes it much more straightforward to put together. Whereas the one with 42 partners was just crazy. So it's really important to recognise that concept development is a very iterative process. So there's lots of back and forth and discussion. You don't just sit down one day and go, this is my project idea, this is exactly what I'm going to do. It doesn't work like that at all. And it can take many, many weeks to get right. It requires discussion with your project partners, particularly ones that have different expertise to yourself or come in from different perspectives. Particularly for the call we've just looked at, you're going to need to be discussing this with your local partners as well. So what's their driver? Why do they want to be part of the project? Get to the final concept that you all agree between you is the best approach forward and responds to what the call is looking for. So with that, I'm going to get you guys to do some work now. So what I'd like you to do is 5 or 10 minutes. I think we can probably maybe do 2 groups here, maybe each side of the table. And then think about potential concepts. So either the call that I've given you, if you want to have a look at that one, or if you've got one of your own that you're working on, and have a think about what might be needed. So,
May I mute for a second?
yes.
There is a problem.
Okay, so you guys on this side of the table and you guys on that side of the table have a discussion and see where you get to. Online, they can either listen in or we can put them in a breakout, whatever you decide is the best. So I'll time for 10 minutes.
If I put them in a breakout room, I'll have
Okay, they can just listen.
it's a very diverse community, okay, very different institutions.
They can have a break for 10 minutes then.
What I would do first, download all the documents here. Read them and then get back to the the call. This is what I would do.
Bravo, vero?
Sì. Da.
Yeah, but we don't have time for that today.
Yeah. I know, but yeah.
It's a practice.
Yeah, I understand.
That's really nice coffee, that one.
Super.
We're doing okay on time.
It's gonna be fine.
Laptop clock is still on British time. Really? It's all right. It's only 10:30. No, it's not 10:30. It's 11.
I saw.
What you told me that.
I saw your clock was British time on Friday throughout the day.
I've still got my watch on British time.
Oh, how to correct over here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Did you stay on Serbian time when you were traveling?
No. Sarà alta corretta.
Climate System Services, да.
Значит, за нас мутируешь, ты нас не слушаешь. Ты нас не слушаешь. Мы не договариваемся.
Frontiera.
Need this notebook.
Yes.
Yeah, so what do you think is needed?
Da, već postoje, znači, kako to mogu sad i koristimo. Kaže,
And it's important.
information.
We're going to use this for the rest of the session. But it's a pretend project, so like it can be anything you want. Frogs in swamps. Forest.
You think just admitting.
When do we know if you?
8 PM tonight. He'll stay.
How many minutes more? 5, 4.5. Okay, 4 minutes more. Attenzione acqua. Poi quello non è che sono queste evidenti. Gantt Chart.
Okay, 2 minutes left.
Okay.
I'm all right for now. Next part's not too long, so.
Hey, no.
Sorry.
Perfect. In an ideal world, insist on crisps, curry,
Clean up, clean now. Good crisps, huh?
They're nice, yeah, they're good.
Didn't fancy a night out one Saturday then in the end.
Yeah.
Okay, if you can finish up, start to finish up. It doesn't matter if you're not fully there or it's fine. Okay. I know we're running a little bit late, so right, okay. So once you've got an idea.
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys, are you
Your
ready?
attention, please.
I know it's a very exciting project idea. Yeah. Hope it's good. Hope it's good. Come back to it, don't you worry. So, once you've got a vague idea what it is you want to do, and you've got a kind of, this is what my project might look like, it's time to start thinking about your objectives and what it is you're going to do in that project. So, or could you click on the, did you, you're still recording?
Oh, no. Go to more, and the other, there. And just,
It's still recording.
sorry.
Good, we got crisps on the recording. Excellent.
You can see here.
Okay, cool. Can you click on the slide? Perfect. Right. Okay, so. Oh, I've gone too far. Look at that. Where are we? Okay, objectives. So objectives are really, really important, especially for European projects, because they link to your work programme, and that work programme is how you're measured on your progress. So they're really important. So we start with an idea, and our project idea, which hopefully you've had some discussion around and some thoughts. So I think this is really important point. Reasons not to select an idea. So you've seen this funding opportunity and you think you've got an idea. Don't apply for it if it's one of these things. It's got to be something you're really passionate about and brought into, else there's no point applying for it. So don't do it because it's going to be the funding pool that's got the biggest budget attached to it. Sometimes it's better to go for a smaller one if it's more aligned to your research and the things that you do. And don't select it just because it's the one that will bring the most recognition to you and your project. It's still got to be right for what it is you want to do. If you're not sure it aligns with your research, you're probably not the right person to lead a project like this, and somebody else might be better off leading on the activities that will take place. Don't pick it because it's fashionable. So I've seen this a lot recently with microplastics. So we have a lot of academics, really great academics at Loughborough, for example, and some of them have started getting interested in microplastics, but they don't have very much expertise. Therefore, it's really difficult for them to demonstrate why they should be a good person to lead a proposal on microplastics. Mm-hmm. Someone suggested to you it might be a good idea. That's never a good idea to buy funding, unless it's Goga that suggests you apply for it, because obviously she knows what would be right for you and your research, probably. And don't do it because you fancy going somewhere exotic. No. That's not a good reason. So I saw a lot of proposals. There's a research institute in the Canary Islands, and I saw they were in a lot of projects for a while. So yeah, don't just do it. I mean, we got away with it with coming to Serbia, didn't we? But that's very exotic for us. But yeah, don't choose it because you think you want to go somewhere different. Okay, so the opposite way around, reasons to select your idea. You're really passionate about the research and the topic, and it's something you really want to progress. So that's a great reason. It moves your research forward from where it is now. It takes it beyond what you're currently doing. You're the right person and you've got the skills to do it and the research skills. It's your idea and you've got a clear idea what you want to achieve, and you've got a vision for the project and how it will work. So I think you're a good example of that with EXtremeClimTwin. You had a good vision, you knew what you wanted to do, and you got a great proposal out of it. It's got to be novel and exciting. There's no point having a project that's not novel, because it won't be funded, so there's no point progressing. And it has very, very clear impact. As was said earlier, impact is a really, really important part of Horizon Europe. So it's got to be relevant. And also someone needs to want to fund it. It can't just be, I've got a great idea. It's got to respond to something that there's a need for funding in that space. Okay, so I'm going to talk about overall objectives. I don't know how well you can see that, sorry, it might be a bit small, but I'll explain it. So when you think about an overall aim for your project, you'll often have a research question that you need to answer. And research questions are a bit tricky because they need to be quite specific. So I've got two examples here. The one on the left is not great, and the one on the right is a lot better. So I'll run through the different parts, so hopefully you'll understand. So on the left, the question is, what's the childhood obesity rate in Nottingham? So Nottingham's a city in the United Kingdom. And an academic can say, I want to understand more about this, but it's quite narrow. It can be answered with a single statistic or a yes or no response. And those are not good research questions. They're not complex enough and they're not specific enough. They can be misinterpreted. So a much better response to that is very much more specific project. How does an improved PE, which is physical education curriculum in Nottingham schools, impact on childhood obesity rates? So there's a very, very clear, specific focus that will have a clear outcome that can then lead to things like papers and things, because it's very specific and it answers a very clear question. So thinking about the next one as well, what are the effects of childhood obesity in the UK? It's very unfocused, it's very broad, it's not specific. Methodology can be quite difficult because what is it you're actually trying to answer? It's very difficult to write a work programme around something that big and that vague. And it can make the scale quite unwieldy and very difficult to answer. So the answer on the right is a lot clearer and a lot more specific. And it provides a real rationale for why the data can be collected and analysed and discussed. The next one down, how much time do children spend being physically active each day? It's too objective. So the data needed is clear, but is it actually just fact gathering rather than actual research? So it doesn't actually it kind of gives us some indication of something, but it doesn't actually lead to research activity. Whereas the question on the right, which is looking at the relationship between those physical activity levels and childhood obesity, is more subjective, and you can create an argument based on the findings that you get from your project. And the last one, how do schools address this problem? It's a very simple question. There's little scope for rigorous research and analysis and really understanding the problem. Whereas the one on the right talks about the effective interventions in primary schools, which is like your elementary schools. And it creates a more complex question and then a really strong research proposition. And it creates much more of a stronger argument as to why the research and activities that need to take place in the project are needed. Now, I fully appreciate these are quite simple research questions when we compare them to what would be in a European research project particularly, but hopefully it gives you an idea about how specific you do need to be when you write these things. And then related to your research question, there are a number of things you can then ask yourself to make sure that it's really clear and really understandable and that it's got a clear focus forward. So looking at where will the answer lead you, what happens next after you found the outcomes of this, what path will the research take, where will you be as a researcher at the end of that research that's been undertaken, what's your argument for undertaking this research, and how does it sit against the backdrop of current knowledge? So this is your state of the art. So how does it fit alongside other research that's being done in this space? And the final one, which is really important as well, is it actually feasible in the time and the envelope in which that project sits? And those are really important points as well, because if none of those are answerable, you haven't clearly gone through your concept well enough to make sure that it's clear and it's a good idea. So this is a bit of a complicated diagram, but it links all the elements of the project together. So you've got your research question or your overall aim of your project and the importance of it. And that then leads into your objectives, which I'll come on to shortly. And then across that sits your people, your resources, where the research will be undertaken, what funding is available, the tools that are available, and any consumables or travel or anything that you need. And these then fall into your specific work packages and the tasks that sit within them. And then your research outputs and impact. Now, if you do a great job on your projects, in theory, these research outputs and impacts create more questions, which then come right back to the top and you find another funding opportunity after the project, which then builds on what you did previously. So hopefully I appreciate it's a bit of a complicated diagram, but I think it's a nice representation of what makes up a research project. Okay, so we can then break the vision down. So I'm going to go a little bit into work packages and tasks a little bit here, because to me, they're all kind of connected together, but I will talk about tasks and work packages a bit more later. So I think these questions are really important. So your aim and your vision is why. Why is this project needed? What's the purpose behind it? Your objectives are what is it you're going to do? Your work packages describe how you're going to do it. Your tasks give all the very specific details, who, what, where, when, how, and how much in terms of resource and cost. And your outputs then achieve the why that you had right at the beginning. So if you structure your project well, you can answer all these questions And then when reviewers read your proposals, they really understand the purpose behind what it is you're trying to do and how it all connects together, because it can be complicated to kind of bring it all together. And I think particularly, I'll talk about work packages later, but when you have other people writing parts of your work programme as well, it can become a bit convoluted. So it's really important to have an individual or a group of individuals that have got a really clear vision of what the project is trying to achieve. So we have two types of objectives, SMART and Flower, which one of my colleagues recommended, and I actually really like it. But in general, the EU do talk about SMART objectives. So I'll run through these and explain a bit more about what they mean and give you some specific examples. So specific, so don't be vague and generic, be very specific with what it is you're going to achieve. So for example, for this project, we will have 5 exchange visits between UNSPMF and Loughborough University over the course of the programme. And that's one of our objectives that we will achieve during the project. They need to be measurable, so that's why we've got the number 5 in there, so it can be clear that's how many we're going to do, and it's clear to anyone reading that that's how many there were going to be. It needs to be achievable, so can we do that in 3 years? Yes, probably, and we probably would have done if we hadn't had a nice pandemic to scupper us in the process. So they need to be achievable and feasible within the timescales. Realistic as well, so not overly ambitious. You know, make sure it's realistic and probable that it will take place in the project. And time, so adding a time scale onto that. Now, I think that's fairly straightforward with a lot of EU projects because it is finite and bound, and it's generally 3 years long. But your objectives will typically link to your work packages, and that will provide the times that are associated with them. So as you can see, the ones on the right are also very, very similar, but they tend to be a bit more scientific in terms of if you're thinking about technical or scientific objectives. I like the relevant one as well. So it's clear that it's relevant to your overall aim and your overall objectives to the project, and it's clear how they contribute towards the overall aims that you have.
Maybe you could explain unequivocal.
Unequivocal. So you can't argue about it. It's very clear, and it's very, you can't misinterpret it in the wrong way is probably how I would describe that. Yeah. So I think one of the things I really recommend to people is when you've written your objectives, it's important to ask somebody else to have a look at them to check that they are clear, because it's very easy when you're close to a project to think that you've written them very clearly. But when somebody else who's less familiar with what it is you've written has a look and they go, don't really understand what you mean by this, that can be a really useful activity to do. Okay. So the next part, once you've got your objectives for your project, these turn into work packages and create the whole structure for your overall project. And again, I just want to add this quite iterative. So often when I've written European projects, I might have 5 or 6 clear overall objectives for my project. But when I write my work packages, they might each have another set of objectives associated with them. But it's important that each of your objectives has a clear relationship to your work programme. So I'll just explain what a work package is for anyone that doesn't know, and anyone that does know, maybe it's a useful refresher. So a work package is a big chunk of work that's going to be undertaken within the project. I corrected this. So it's usually for an EU project. It's, I would say, typically between 5 and 7. I meant to correct that, sorry. Usually between 5 and 7 work packages. It's 3 to 5 technical work packages. So it's important to recognise you need a project management work package for EU funding and a dissemination and exploitation work package as well. So 3 to 5 technical work packages, probably how I would describe it. Each one has a very clear start and end date. It's a very defined piece of work, almost like a mini project in itself. And it's sometimes interdependent on other work packages, particularly where some research is occurring in an earlier work package that maybe feeds into the next one, or maybe they're happening at the same time, but at various points they feed into each other. They can run in parallel, so you can have two running at the same time. You have some that run the whole project, like the coordination work package or dissemination, and you have some that run very sequentially, so one finishes and the next one starts, and it's really dependent on your project and how it works. I always recommend having a little bit of overlap between work packages, even if they are sequential, because it just builds in a bit of contingency. They're made up of a series of tasks, which I'll come on to later. And they can involve more than one person or organisation, but typically they would be led by one person or organisation. And they're designed to meet the project objectives, as I mentioned before. So typically, and this I think makes a really straightforward proposal, typically it's good to have one objective for each work package. That's like, to me, that's the cleanest way to do it. It doesn't always work out that way, but that, at least if you start in that perspective, I think that's the cleanest and easiest way to do it. So I've stolen this chart off the internet, so thank you for where I got this from. But it's just an example of thinking about work packages. So I often start with this. When I've got my objectives and my overall aim, I start thinking about the chunks of work that are really going to take that up. And I often use sticky notes, post-it notes, so I'll write them out. I might have 20 at that point, and it helps you kind of put them together into chunks of work. Sometimes you need to do that, sometimes not. But I find when I wrote EU proposals before, I found this a really helpful visual of the whole project. And actually, it's the part of the proposal that I would always go back to check that everything was correct and in the right place. And this is just an example of how one might look. So when I used to do proposals for businesses, there would typically be 3 key elements, which were technical aspects that needed to be done individually by different groups of people that would lead into an integration work package where a product or something was developed, and then that would be exploited wherever it would be. But as you can see, each one's led by a different partner, and they've got different partners contributing to them. Some partners might contribute to one work package only, others might contribute to more. It just really depends on their role in the project. But I really like PERT charts. I think they're really nice. I'll show you the EXtremeClimTwin one in a bit because I think it's great. Oh, okay, so I said I'd talk about tasks, so here we go. So typically you would have 2 to 5 tasks per work package. I'll come on to that in a minute. Sometimes more, but it makes your project really complicated. So try and keep it as refined as you can. And what it does, it breaks up the work within a work package into a set of activities. And again, it just breaks it down step by step. And typically each task will have an individual or an organisation that leads it, along with people that are maybe contributing to it as well. And it is the smallest chunk of work in the project. The methodologies involved in the description. So for each task, you would really clearly describe what it is you're going to do, any techniques you're going to apply, the methodology that you're going to provide. And it usually results in or contributes to a deliverable. So when I started writing EU proposals, you always had a deliverable per task. That was how it was seen. That's not so much the case anymore, because you ended up spending your whole life writing deliverable reports for EU, because you would have like 27 and a whole, yeah. So it's not good. So now I would usually have 2 or 3 deliverables per work package. So you might have 1, 2, 3 tasks that all lead to one deliverable. Yeah. And it stops you spending your whole life writing deliverable reports, which is not a fun way to live, to be honest.
Excuse me, or the commissioner will want you to squeeze them in at the very end. When you come to the phase of grant and preparation procedure, they will ask you to downsize your deliverables and make them neater and merge wherever possible. So it's
and that's changed, because it didn't used to be like that at all. They used to love having loads of deliverables, but they've realised now it's not value.
Tons of work and lack of people in the European Commission, like reviewers and.
Yeah. So the work package lead typically allocates this work between the consortium, and it's the leader for for these task leaders to feed up into. And the work package leader is usually the one responsible for making sure that everyone's doing what they should do during the project. And tasks like work packages have very clear ownership by an individual in a project, and they would usually be the technical expert for whatever that particular piece of work is. And it works quite well, I think. And again, they're time limited, so they're not just going on forever. So if you have a work package that, let's say the work package runs for 12 months, each task within that might only run for 3 months or 6 months, depending what the work is. So they can be quite, they look the same as work packages in that respect. Then we have outputs, outcomes, deliverables, whatever language you want to use. EU loves the word deliverables. That's their big thing, but it depends on your funder. So these define your endpoints for your tasks, your work packages, or your milestones. And they're often used by funders such as the EU for an assessment of progress. So if you've not submitted your deliverable reports by the due dates, the EU will deem that you're not progressing on your project. So these are really important, which is why it's important not to have 22 million of them and have a smaller number so it's feasible. They measure the project success. So if these aren't submitted and aren't done, it's deemed your project's not progressing and not being successful. So it's important to have these. And the most important thing is they're quite tangible and they're outputs from the research. So some examples of the types of things that might be considered a deliverable is a publication into a journal could be considered a deliverable, a prototype of some new system that you've developed. It could be a report on the work that you've done during that period with some recommendations at the end, or it could be some impact activity as well. So it could be a conference that you've run and all the details around how that went. They are very specific, they are identifiable, and they are, as I say, they're tangible. They're kind of things that you can go, yes, that's what we did. And there's loads of them on the internet, loads and loads. So most EU projects, their deliverables, most of them are public. There'll be the odd one that's not because it's like commercially sensitive or whatever. So they're really great because, so for example, I was looking at one yesterday which was all about writing dissemination and exploitation plans in a proposal, which I'll run through tomorrow. And that's an output of a research project. And the other thing that's really important as well is often these deliverables and these reports feed back into the European Commission. So under Horizon 2020, somebody did a canvas, an impact canvas. I've seen it on the internet and they were like, this is a really good way to show impact. And now the EU have put that into their, or there's someone waiting to come in. Now the EU have put that into their template. So it's, you know, they do listen to this stuff and they do get feedback. So they're good things. Okay. So this is just an example, a very basic example of what a work package might look like. So we've got Professor Green here. He's leading work package 1, which links to objective 3. Just ignore the numbers on here, it's just an example. And it runs from month 12 to 24 of the project. And within that, he's got 4 tasks, which are the things that he's going to do during that period, or she, it could be a female Professor Green. The things that professor's going to lead on during that project, and the deliverable that's the main output from that work. So it's a fairly basic example, but that's the type of thing you would expect to see as a structure for a work package. And then all these work packages lead into your objectives, which lead into your overall project aim. So it's kind of like top down and then bottom up and top down again and bottom up until you've got it all right. So again, I'll come back to the word iterative. It's very much back and forth while you get everything firmed up and right. Okay, that's that.
Right.
So now I think we have a long break now, if I'm correct.
Yeah. It's
Quite early.
30-minute one. Right.
30-minute break. Did I finish early?
No,
Sorry?
this is one, until 12:45.
12:15, 12:45.
Yes,
Shall we start? Resume back on time, 12:45?
yeah.
Ok. Dragi kolegi i online, imamo jednu sad dužu pauzu za ručak, tako da se vidimo nazad u 12:45. Ok, hvala vam puno do sada i u 12:45 se vraćamo radionici. Sada ćemo da se... Evo nas ponovo nazad. Nadam se da se dobro i čujemo i vidimo ponovo. Samo ako može jedna mala potvrda od nekog ko je na chatu, da nam kaže da se dobro i vidimo i čujemo. Molim vas. Super, hvala Danilo mnogo. Hvala Miloše, super. Nastavljamo dalje. Koleginica Claire Edwards nastavlja svoju prezentaciju. Claire, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
Hvala svima vama što ste tu.
Do you need to record?
I am recording. It's
Can
fine.
you click on the slide?
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Claire.
That's all right.
Sorry.
There we go. Okay, so we're going to spend the next hour-ish looking at project timelines and work plans. And then I'm going to get you guys to have a think about that and do a practice. So this is the work plan that was for the EXtremeClimTwin project. So hopefully you all know it really well. But you can see it's a bit different from the chart that I showed you earlier, probably because there's a lot more interlinks between a lot of the work packages, and they don't just all feed nicely into a final one. They're very interconnected in a lot of ways. Yeah, has anyone got any questions about that, or are you familiar with it? Or okay, we will share the slides afterwards, so if you can't see it very well, you can have a look on there. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do now, 30 minutes, is to look at either the example project you came up with this morning, or a project idea you have, or alternatively, you can use the EXtremeClimTwin project, and we can share this with you in the room if you want to have a look at it. And think about the structure and what the possible outputs might be from each part of the work programme. So what work packages might you have, how that might work. And make sure you have at least 5 work packages, with one dedicated for coordination and management and one dedicated for dissemination and exploitation. So we'll ask you to show us what you've got. So if you can draw a nice structure on a piece of paper, that would be really helpful. Yeah, does that make sense? Everyone happy with what you're doing? You can, as I say, you can pick any project you want, even if it's something you have in your mind or something what we did this morning, or you can base it on the EXtremeClimTwin project.
Are we all clear with the idea of what to do? Yeah, we can work in groups.
Silence tells it all.
Za kolege koji nas prate online, ja predlažem da ako ste identifikovali poziv, da uradite isto ovu vežbu i na kraju možete da nam se javite, jer ćemo imati Q&A session i onaj wrap-up, pa to možemo da prokomentarišemo zajedno sa koleginicom Claire. I naravno mi ovde kao domaćini. Tako da, verujem da imate neki svoj poziv na ko možete da radite, a također možete da iskoristite poziv koji smo identifikovali za današnju radionicu na kome zapravo radimo sve vreme. Ako imate nekih pitanja, možemo da vas uključimo ili možete da ih pitate u chat, ja ću ih pročitati naglas i onda ćemo komentarisati. Hvala.
If anyone has any questions or wants some help while you're working on this, just shout up and we'll come and help, okay?
Claire, could you share the previous slide?
Yep. Or can you click on it, Gogo?
Yep. Sorry.
There you go. Socio.
The base.
Imate znači 2 ćemo, jedan će biti management, jedan destination, imate 3 implementacijona radne ili kako razvojne koje su vam sve što.
Što ti drugi poziv?
Podelit ću ovo što smo mi pisali. Da je to nam?
Koji?
Kako to mi tako? Da nam to naš...
Koji tražiš sam?
Naš... Potreban.
Sumatra, screenshot.
Da, pa vidi koliko sam te napravili. Gledaj.
Da, on sam kući.
Vidim da ona radi, vidim samo da šal, super.
Gledaj. Sad viš možda biti sjad. Ovo sam namerno. Vidi koliko imaš
Ja admitujem ljude. Evo.
Onda sam udala. Znači ti izgledaš sad trebaš da ćemo tu baciti.
Tako.
Gdje smo možda klimu?
To je samo da nisu nešto tamo.
Jel hoćeš?
Ne, to je da.
Rekao moj.
To je čak što ja pucam i vrata samo da niko ne raskoči.
Pinkom, evo. Švajno.
Evo, kao samo slika nam treba.
Ranji paket.
Tako.
Vidim,
Kako to izgleda lepo. Kako smo mi njega napravili. Kako ti? Sad ću ti pokažem. Evo ih radim paket, ali mi nismo imali tu sliku.
Da ne bi metodology trebalo da imamo ono slike stranih paketima kad koji ide.
Čuješ to reći?
ne mogu. Nisam ne
Evo ti
pročila.
ga, bilo, evo ti ga, to ti je ovo. Sad ću ti još screenshot, ali brzo ne.
Evo ga.
Sva što ti je, to ti je to.
Oni su se ušli.
Uveličam i mnogo.
Ovo dva su ti, dva su tri su.
Stop. Ok, ovo su working
Ovo su
packages.
working, ovo su climate.
Ok, dissemination, ok.
Ali vidi ovaj koji
Ovo su
obuhvate.
climate, ovo su communication.
Yeah.
Da, ovo su climate, communication i ovo su treninzi.
Zelen.
Da, zeleni, pardon, da.
Da. Ali što mi to nije nešto baš pregledno tako.
Kako nije?
Nije.
Ova četiri se vežu. Radimo trening diseminaciju i outreach i management koji obuhvata sve. Diseminaciju.
Znaš kako bi ti možda bilo, kada si ne zašto što ti četvrte, što si u krug stavila, onda bi ti bilo...
Da bi verovatno, to je da, i kad god mi je ovo čitanje vodoravno, odnosno vertikalno, to mi je distraction.
No, super je stvarno dobro. Sve je odlično, ali su bitni.
Excuse me, just the timing.
Yeah,
When do we start?
30 minutes, I've got a timer, I'll give you a warning.
Okay.
I'll give you a halfway warning and then...
Thank you. So I can...
Oh, I'm glad you're doing it.
Yeah.
Very good.
We want you to come on top of the classroom.
Yes. Stand and deliver.
I've got 3.5 as well.
Okay.
So would anyone in the room like to share?
Hello everyone, we're back.
We're back.
Vratili smo se nazad, radionica je završena. Prvo ćemo da pitamo kolege koji su u samoj, u klubu, ovdje kod nas uživo, da li bi neko želeo da podeli svoje urađeno na pauzi. Claire, the floor is yours. So
Thank you. Yeah, would anyone in the room like to share what they did during that session?
Anyone?
Anyone?
Yes.
Yeah, go on then.
There's some outline and sketch.
Cool. Do you want to hold it to the camera so the people online can see?
You can share the screen.
I
You can
was
share the
trying to
screen.
make
You can
it-
share the screen. Samo da pitam kolege koji nas slušaju online, da li se i dalje dobro čuje ili treba da rasporedimo mikrofone ili nešto da možemo da uradimo da bude sve ok. Kažete nam samo da čujemo se. Hvala Miloše mnogo, super. Hvala. Hvala Maja.
Do we need to stop
Hvala,
sharing?
Aleksandra.
Unfortunately,
You need to stop sharing.
I'm not connected to Zoom because I was trying, there was some password.
Pa će kolega da podeli ekran, pa ćete moći da vidite šta je urađeno.
Ali imaš password.
Sam našao.
Čekaj, šalim ti, ja.
Iba imaš?
Evo ga, 5, 6, 3, 4, 1, 8.
Sad pokušavam da se...
Konačno baš.
Da. Yes, my connection is too slow.
Ajde, Miljana.
so it's-
I can share the screen.
Imamo dobrovoljca, we have a volunteer.
Always
She's
the
the
volunteer.
coordinator of this project. Yeah.
Okay, let me just find the document. Yeah, this is the one. Great. Okay. That's actually the chart from our proposal that we submitted, but unfortunately didn't get the funding. They didn't actually have any comments on the management, on the methodology, on just some other stuff, but I think that we can make it better for the next time. So we have 4 implementation work packages. One work package that actually is the training, because this was for Mariska Dolska-Key Reactions Doctoral Network. So we had to have the specific work package dedicated to training of early stage researchers. We have a dissemination and outreach, which means that all the results from the implementation work packages and the training activities will be disseminated and communicated to a wider audience. And we have a management and recruitment, which is the work package 1, and it is actually covers all the other packages of the proposal. Each of the work packages is really good connected to our objectives that we proposed in our proposal. So for the objective 1, we had work package 2. For the objective 2, we had work package 3. For objective 3, we had the work package 4, etc. So for work package 1, dissemination and management and recruitment, and for dissemination, we didn't have any objectives outlined, because those are the work packages that are supposed to be there in the Horizon Europe proposals. So this is the idea. Comments, because Goga told us something that she would do differently. Yes.
Can you explain the topic? So just about the development work packages.
Yeah, we actually had an idea to connect climate change and climate extremes in Southeast Europe to communicate different communication strategies. So we had an idea to somehow combine different disciplines from social science and communication and physical science, climate change. So the aim was to train the new generation of climate change scientists to get the results and to communicate the results efficiently so that they will affect the people's behavior for the better, for climate change. For example, not to use so much coal in the future, or not to use their car when they can use the bicycle, etc. So climate change scientists should know the efficient ways of communicating their results to wider public, so that the people can change their behavior and act.
Actually, it was just the wider public. Actually, we have developed different target groups. It was also the decision makers, how to communicate, how to conduct advocacy, for example. And also we targeted industry, different sectors of industry, how to communicate with them the results.
This is actually design an experiment with behavioral change, which is really important, because early stage researchers from this work package would actually use the results from the work package 2 and work package 3 to get the results and try to communicate them with the let's say, pilot areas and pilot subjects to see how and if they can, lead to behavioral change in the future. So this was the idea.
And as they are also early stage researchers, when we were talking with the colleagues that are members of the consortiums, they said when they finish the PhD, they hit the wall. So they don't know where to go further. So also that communication is connected to their, let's say, pathways to employment, where to land their research and how to communicate with a specific target group.
So for the future, this work package 4 and 5 could be actually translated into other disciplines. It doesn't have to be climate change, but other disciplines. Transferable if they produce a good model for behavioral change and communication with different stakeholders, wider public, etc. They can be used for different disciplines, not only climate change, maybe health. I don't know, medicine, health, whatever.
So we targeted the accessibility of communication and the results.
How many tasks did you
Develop within the packages? Depends
on average, 3.
Three, four, because there are a lot of work packages already, and we cut down the deliverables also and tasks. So we had a bit more tasks, and then we asked every partner, member of the consortium was developing their work package.
It actually depends on just Nico, please help with the PD. Actually, with different work for this implementation work packages, we had 3 tasks, and for the training we had to have more. We actually had tasks and subtasks. And also for dissemination and management, we had tasks and subtasks because it actually needed.
And just please tell us how many partners you have.
Partners.
Yes.
Partners a lot.
10 partners.
That's quite a consortium. Yeah.
10 partners. No, 15 partners. Sorry, 15 partners, 10 countries.
10 countries, 15 partners.
That's quite a lot.
For coordinator, it's a headache.
Yeah.
And so we targeted 15, the maximum number of ESRs, so it's quite a lot. And Biljana said there's the management and recruitment. So,
Okay, I can stop sharing and maybe Minucha can share his screen.
Okay, we have another volunteer to discuss the projects.
So this proposal is not nearly as complete, of course, as the other one.
it's already submitted.
We try to aim on the call that Claire presented. So the basic idea was to design and implement groundwater monitoring network.
We don't see it. Can you share?
And I will share my screen. Just a second.
What was the thing you would have changed on that one?
The visual. Yeah.
And how would you change it?
I would make it more circular and rounded. So I would definitely have the management and dissemination capture all of the work packages. So but it's a visual preference. It's my style.
It actually captures, but maybe it's not so visible.
Yeah, and maybe the vertical letters are also distracting. If you ask, this is very personal. I would leave it to personal preferences.
What is the problem here? What we needed to take into account is the 30 pages maximum. So we needed to cut a lot of text to make the pictures.
Okay.
Nika, you're on.
So this is the outline only of an initial idea,
Right.
of course, and we plan 6 work packages and divide. I don't know if you can read it.
We can.
So the first, we copied the EXtremeClimTwin work package 1, which is a really good idea to have the project coordination and management package, which is actually connected to all other, of course, packages. Then the second work package is designing the monitoring network, because this is the problem that we don't have a network of monitoring for groundwater levels and groundwater quality. And the third work package would be the development of geospatial data processing platform. So that's the idea that to have local data integrated with climate data. And then the fourth work package is the actual building of the network. I'm not sure if this call covers that costs of building the actual measuring network, but if it does, that would be the fourth package, third package. The fifth would be the analysis of the results of the government quality and levels assessment, and of course the sixth is the dissemination and outreach, so the sharing of project results. So this is like a basic idea.
Have you managed to create objectives so that you can read an objective and connect it to the work package, please? That would be awesome.
Yes, we discussed about it, so my colleagues can join me in this part. The objective would be to connect to fill in the missing gap, the gap in the data and the measurements, and then to actually present these results to the public, which could lead to some beneficial developments. Because we identify this gap currently that exists, that we don't have this local data, which is very important, and which could be connected to the existing freely available climate data. So this is one of the aspects of climate change, the problem of falling groundwater levels. So the objective would be to improve the quality of available data, to connect that with the freely available climate data, and to raise the awareness of public. Now that would be, I think, part of the sixth package, that objective. So this is really very quickly done, but the basic.
Yes, of course.
It's great that you've clearly got the concept of how it all fits together, so that's brilliant. I have a question. Does work package 5 come after work package 4?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, so we have to have the measurement results prior to the analysis.
Maybe better to put it down.
Yeah, I wonder if it might be better put below, because it looks like it happens sort of before.
Yes, so I would have to work on the designing of this.
Yeah, this was a really quick one. Have you thought though about those vulnerable communities and regions?
Yes.
And which ones did you identify for your scope?
Yes, well, actually, we would have to have socio-demographic data to actually have the basis for this analysis.
So that
identify, and then those would be the communities which are affected by this demographic decline, by the socio-economic problems in the passive parts of the country. So those parts that are affected by the demographic decline, basically, and socio-economic decline.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't have time to go through the footnote and read the actual paper suggested for that vulnerable community. So great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well done. That's brilliant.
And this is a perfect example how colleagues can collaborate in-house, because here are the colleagues from social sciences and humanities. So this is quite a good example of working intersectional, interdisciplinary.
Yes, exactly.
And water quality.
So who knows?
And water quality as well.
This will be an initial
Starting point, yeah.
Absolutely, we might pull something good here.
Anyone else? Yeah.
So the main idea of our project proposal is.
Sorry, would you like to share?
We don't have it on.
You want to hold?
You have to go closer to the camera.
We did it manually.
That's all right.
So the main idea of our research is to increase the awareness of the local population within the border areas of potentials for raising and increasing the tourism development in order to avoid the population, or to how to say, not to stop it, but to
Minimize the
decrease, yes.
yes.
So the first work package of our project is, of course, management and coordination. Our outputs are reports, quarterly and final, and data management plan. Our second work package is related to literature review and data processing. in order to precise the gap in the literature on this topic. And the third work package of our research is related to pilot questionnaire testing. So we will develop questionnaires. We will also to organize 4 workshops, 2 lectures, and 4 interviews. Our 4 work packages related to representative center development. So Center for Developing Tourism within this border area, several border areas within our country, actually. And the final one is definitely dissemination of our results, and it will be developed on scientific papers, websites, social media, and promo material. Sorry.
Great, that's cool. I have one comment, which is quarterly reports for your management. Great idea, but will be a real pain in the backside after the first 2. So I would go 6 monthly. It depends how long your project is, obviously, but if it was a standard 3-year project, you wouldn't want to do it any more often than probably every 6 months as a maximum. Because like the next quarter, you'll just be like, oh, I have another one to write. So yeah, probably a little bit more spread out would be good. But yeah, sounds good to me and well thought through. I'm going to cover some of the dissemination things tomorrow. So you'll be able to hear a little bit more about some ideas of things you could do for that. So do you have any other comments on that?
Well, I was just typing in that we really encourage colleagues online to share ideas. Dragi kolege koji ste s nama online, slobodno se prijavite da podelite ideju ako ste uspeli da uradite vežbu u međuvremenu ili imate projekat na kom radite pa biste voljeli da podelite dok ste stigli ili možda postavite neko pitanje da svi prokomentarišemo, samo izvolite, samo napred.
Možda imaju prethodne neke projekte što su razvijali.
Da.
Ili nešto,
da mogu da prozovem odmah za koga znam.
Nije nešto prošlo ili imali ste neku veću zamerku pa da prokomentarišemo skupa ili šta god biste voljeli da podelite, sad je trenutak.
Some silence.
Yeah.
I can call out the people I know who has projects and
Aha, Tiljana ima malo radikalniji pristup, tako da prozvaće, pa ako ste za, samo napred, ako niste, ok, i to. Kaži Dio.
I just wrote to Miloš, can you share your project? It got funded.
Naš kolega Miloš.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Just
I prepared. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Miloše. Hvala puno. Thank you.
So can you see it?
yeah.
Yes, nice.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's how I like it. Yeah.
So as you can see, we have 6 working packages. That's something that is recommended, and Claire told us to have not so many working packages as we can. So project coordination and management is an overall package, and it's lasts from the beginning to the end of the project. Then since the twinning was related to the building capacity of the institute, we have strategy as a separate working package. Then we have a training that include building not only the researchers and the capacity, but also the administrative staff. Then the twinning call was related to the research, and we have one research package as a recommendation. So working package 4, international office that we have to launch and to develop during the project was the 5th, and the dissemination was the 6th and the last one.
Sounds really, really great. Looks good, really. Thank you. You will start the International Research Management Office, right?
Yes, we will start because we don't have it at the moment.
Perfect. But that's super that you have a separate work package for it. Yeah, great.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Are you
Thank
welcome?
you. And good luck and congratulations to you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
I think the thing I wanted to say is you can see from all of these, they're not complicated. They don't have loads and loads of information on them. They're quite simple, but I think they really represent how projects look and the flow of work. So I love PERT charts. I think they're brilliant. So that was great. Okay, you're going to be pleased to know you're going to be doing some more work now. So if we can put the slides back up. And maybe I'll ask different people to present back afterwards.
Samo ideš na share, moraš ići share.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the next thing I want. Oh, you're recording.
It's not shared.
It's not shared, just let me first share the screen and then you can go. This one.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
this one.
This one, Claire. And then this one.
Yeah.
No.
This one.
Yeah.
Which one? Which one?
This one. Okay. Is it? Let's see. Is there this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we can go. No, not from beginning. From current.
Let's get on here.
Okay, great, cool.
I think that
Are we
you change.
recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the next,
Recording, sorry.
that's okay. This recording's gonna just have me laughing all the time.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
okay, sorry. Are you ready now?
This is all Gantt Chart.
Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is Gantt chart. So I appreciate this is not the easiest to see. We made it as big as we could. So this is the EXtremeClimTwin Gantt chart. So a Gantt chart, this is my other second favourite diagram in the whole proposal. Another really visual representation of a project and how it sits with a timescale. So at the top, along the top is the months of the project. And for this particular project, it goes from month 1 to month 36 because it's a 3-year project. I have seen these done as quarters of the project as well. So each block could be 3 months, but it depends on your project and how.
Claire, I'm sorry, there is something wrong with the share. Miko, can you help?
Okay.
I think that we are sharing the wrong.
We cannot see. Aha,
Yeah,
the wrong
yeah.
screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're sharing the wrong screen. Izvinjamo se kolegama online, zato što smo, da,
Okay, so
odbili
let's see.
smo drugu prezentaciju.
The mouse is there.
Aha, so we are
It's
sharing
fine.
from this computer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
just stop
Okay,
and
let me see the
start
second
again.
Okay.
Now
With that one,
this one should be.
yeah. And now go to the, from the current slide.
Okay, samo full view.
Can we see it now?
Let me just see.
It's
Yeah.
not full view. But
But
not full view.
it's not, look,
Not
Miko.
full view. Kako se vidi? Čekaj sam.
Vidi se
Evo,
kao
vidi samo
slide.
se
Kao lijevo kopija ekrana.
Hmm?
Aha, kao slide.
Mhm.
Yes, it switched the screens.
Yeah.
So we will share now the main screen. Right forward, this one. Yeah, that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not
Yeah.
working.
Okay, sad.
Oh, okay, so now you can actually see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So this is a Gantt chart, so I say. 36 months of the project goes along the top. And all down the left-hand side, you've got all the tasks for the whole project. So it's structured with work packages and then all the tasks that relate to that work package. And these guys did a brilliant job of giving each work package a different colour. So it's very easy to see which section belongs to which work package. You can make these Gantt charts as simple or as complicated as you want to. So I've seen some that have like diamonds on them to mark out deliverables or milestones in the project. And I've seen some where they've got arrows pointing out where things like connect to each other and that type of thing. But there's loads of examples of these on the internet as well, if you want to see what some other ones look like. But hopefully that gives you a good indication. And also the other thing I really like about them is it shows how the timings of each work package and how they link together. So you can see like work package 1, no, I think it's work package 2 finishes at a certain point, but work package 3 like sort of starts before the green one ends and then carries on for a longer period. And then you can see when all the tasks occur during the project. So what we're going to do now, is 20 minutes now to look at your Gantt chart that you just did and have a think about the timings for each work package. If you have time, put it in a Gantt chart, sorry. Put your
Has to do that, right? Activities.
Yeah, but you can just do it for your work packages for now.
Okay.
Keep it quite simple at this point, just to give you an idea how to do it. And assume that your project is 3 years long. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Fine.
Možda kolege koji rade online imaju sad malo i više vremena da razmisle ko nije formirao taskove u prethodnoj vežbi, da ih sad na neki način oblikuje, pa da možete da poređate taskove, makar kod tih technical work packages koji nisu work package 1 management i koji nije work package 6 ili već poslednji koji je communication and outreach. Probajte taskove makar ugrubo da uradite za ovo vreme koliko je predviđeno za vežbu.
Okay, great. 20 minutes.
Daj mi ću. Ma nije mi samo nabacaš. Samo ih nabacaš.
Ne, točno 20 minuta, tu sam treba da paket da kažem, prvi mesec do 15. Ne prepisuju.
Ne prepisuju.
Ovo se zove svoje taske.
Ništa ne prepisuješ. To je sve moje. Sve sam napisala. Evo, gledajte ovo.
Resevska škola.
Da.
20.
Nemoj da ih da plašiš. Šta sve ti popraviti? Znaš. Ja bojio tu jako kad spajao. To naš. Da ti pišem to, ali ne pišem, ali sam. Ja vidiš koliko si lici jezikom.
To samo.
Samo climate. To ti opet tu, opet nismo način da rade. Odlično. Ne znam, dole sam.
Jako dobro.
To mislim. Da.
Znači moramo bolje razmišljati.
I bolje.
Vidjet ćemo. A ti je akademik?
Diseminaciju. Ali sad ću vam ga se čuvati, pa ću... Da, samo kopiju.
Publikiramo publikacije koje razvijemo jače ove metode i vidjet ću publikacije. Samo se dobro, ovdje ćemo da... Ja vas znam.
Ne, ja znam, prijemno da. Posadili smo se ovdje, hvala.
Šta je od točno?
Znači, bolje objasniti.
Najgore toga ja ne znam, to ne na srpsko da kažem. Šta treba da kažem? Za viknice.
Ja znam, ovo ti ne opisuje 2 weeks secondments, znači šta će oni raditi za te 2 nedelje i kako to utiče na njihov trening.
Nije dovoljan broj.
Tako je, ovo ti je ono što sam ti rekao da nemaš interlinkage između ovih različitih propozala što rade, znači da moraš da ih uvežeš jedan, threadline, kaže Silver, i povezuje sve zero lining, i povezuje sve sa nekim velikim problemom. Aha, ok. Ovo treba samo da nismo dotakli rizike. Ovo samo pitaću ja kako je uopšte nismo uključili, ovo nismo ni pisali.
No, I don't see you.
Nemaš ovo ti, nemaš, pa kažem ti, ogledaj što ti strane.
To je jako ozbiljno.
Ovo gore?
Prvo.
Prvo, da. Samo što ne znam zašto su samo akademik sektor, zašto nije industry sektor? Zašto se ostaje akademik sektor, zašto nije industry sektor? A čak sam industrial, čak mi je više logike da industrial je smo.
To ste vjerojatno dobro pokrili, ali šta ako to se ostane na ovo?
Zašto? Da se ti kažem. Ja sam
Sad ću ti reći. A nisi akademik, a kako ćeš pokriti? Ovo mi nije ozbiljno. Slušaj me, ovo kako ćeš pokriti Beyond State of the Art research kad dobiješ, kad napraviš takve propozile, kad radi tu se nije akademski put. Šta će biti prepoznati kao leading science.
Slušaj još nešto, da želaš ih da ti rade kao docenti, kao mladi. Da obrazuju novu generaciju.
Ili project related ako ispolišu research skill, mogu napraviti.
Tako i doktorske studije, tako. Znači oni ti ostaju doktorskim studijama. Kao predavanje. Getting research and looking at professional links to climate manage i tu sam napisala koji su da tu private public methodological weather forecast public sector policy climate change advocacy. Sve vidim. Čekaj što ti treba. Or to stay within academia and continue improving the doctoral programs and work by applying the skills in academia.
Academic and research environment. Znači nekako.
Possibly allowing them to make commercial exploitation in their own research projects and startups joining prestigious international organizations, European Center for Medium-Range Forecasting,
or staying in the academia, working on
tačno je pa još jedan paragraf da kažem.
Zato pa to, ali on ti primetio, nema veze.
Znamo, desno.
Kažem ti, znači sa poboljšanjem.
Ne znam kako to glasi, to jako nije bitno. Što ti nam isto izlazi? Ne znam.
To ti je ovaj Microsoft.
Hajde, anyway.
MSN News.
Da, scientific
morali smo da kažemo u kojim časovima.
Ovo treba software što se znači traži artificial intelligence povećanje, kako ćemo ga koristiti i software exploitation, engineering, pre-engineering. To ti kažem, nismo razvukli, ja bi tu bacio što i predlagao malo encompasses kako se radi. To ti je ono, znači taj soft political advocacy kako se radi kroz lobbying, kroz NGO, stvari kako se radi. To je tebi ne, ali to ti je jako jasno. Ono mi je tamo malo, znaš, onako, ovo ti je jako jasno da treba da pojačaš klimu. Physical i climate change science work, znači neko, znači trebate advanced tools, ono, research excellence. Algorithms, znači on ti samo traži jači climate research. Viš artificial da pojačamo.
To ćemo morati da zavrljamo kako se testiramo modeli. Kako se stavimo tu 5 reči koje će.
Sad možeš lagno da proširiš i listu ovih doktorskih kandidata na nekoga koja je statistika, matematika.
Da. Mi smo gurali ove koje su bile čiste, ne, ali znači mi smo gurali čiste climate. Ti ćeš sad povezati klimatologa s matematičarem. Ti ćeš povezati klimatologa s matematičarem. Ti ćeš samo ubaciti što smo imali supervisor, sad ćeš ubaciti matematičara, supervizora koji će to raditi. On je
Evo. Uključila se.
Da samo objavim da imamo još sad već 3 minuta do kraja kolegama koji su online, a i našim kolegama u sobi.
Gde je sad to? Kako se to? Ali ja ne, hu.
Jako, to piše.
Saška?
S.A. dragi. S.A. dragi.
Imam, evo nešto. Poslala.
Thank you.
Kako smo ja, baš nešto internet stvar.
Jako, ne si par puta, mislim, kako način izgleda.
Okay, is everyone finished? Yeah.
Ok, vreme je isteklo.
So who'd like to go first this time? Is there anyone online maybe first this time?
I think we have a volunteer.
Yeah.
Saška,
Ja, u smislu mogu.
imamo dobrovoljca. Opet ohrabrujemo kolege koji su online da podele svoje. Ako ne, pa ćemo prozivati. I just said we would again call out if there are no volunteers online.
Neko drugi spreman, možda krene.
Snežana Maletić, može.
Može. Neću ja da prozovem. Ok, Saška, si spremna?
A jesam, ali moj računar nije čak.
Moraš da prestaneš da širiš.
Ok.
You need to stop sharing,
Okay.
and then Sashka can share. Yeah, admit, and then stop sharing, and sad probaj da share.
Fiksala, probaj sad.
Ok, jesi ti connect. Pišem to.
Znači.
Šlo? Sad idem na share da idem to na može.
Samo share pa onda izabereš taj dokument koji si.
Ja ovo ne mogu.
Može.
Hello everyone. Can you see this Gantt chart? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's very blue. This is start.
That's too small now.
Okay, so
You can just scroll. Yeah. That's good.
okay, so the first package is management. So kickoff meeting is at the beginning of the project. Then regular meetings every month. Then reporting.
Every 4 months.
Yes, but I actually want to show you another Gantt chart. Sorry for that. This. It looks very similar. Okay, I can. Okay, so this reporting action needs to be on every third month, so not on fourth, on third month, so third, 6, 9, 12, etc. Then data management plan. It needs to be finished at the end of the first 6 months of the project. Then sampling monitoring, then dissemination monitoring every month, and final report at the end of the project in the last month of the project. So it's first work package. Then second one is the literature review and data processing. So the study background and database creation are actually for whole project duration, for whole 36 months. Then procurement of the necessary data. Then we have database storage on particular platform. Every month we need to put new information, to put new data on some platform. Then methodology, also from the beginning till the end of the project. Okay. These actually 2 sub-activities I didn't want to show you today. So third work package is pilot questionnaire testing. So we need to identify the key variables and instruments for data collection, which will be in the 4th month of the project. Then we need to analyze basic regional geographical indicators. It will be 2 months work activities, 3rd and 4th months of the project. Then create questionnaires, also 2 months. Conducting pilot research testing, also 2 months. And then we need to go to field research, such as interviews, workshop, lectures, and discussion with local communities. So it's 3 months activities. Then we will actually engage agency for survey, and we suppose that for that kind of agency need 2 months to finish this kind of activities. Then methodology modification is 1 month activities, and data processing, it's for whole period of this work package, or duration, yes. Then work package 4. Then problem. Okay, so I will explain you work package 5, establishment of stakeholders networks. We need to do this through development center. Also, we can engage PhD students through the same center to put them a chance to take a chance to be in scientific research like this. So foundation of the center needs to be in the first 6 months of the project, development center too, and procurement of equipment and sample for the center. We need to get equipment in the first few months of the project, maybe in the first 4 or 6 months of the project. And then dissemination. We have a lot of activities here. the opening conference of the project, then visual identity of the project, project promotional kits, development of web page and Facebook, Instagram page, presentation of the results to the scientific community through papers, study, monography, or guide, or something like that. Then translating, open access publication, events, science promotion events. Then workshop and final discussion with students. Scientific session, which will be the part of one big international conference related to the topic of our project. And the closing conference of the project will be at the end.
Yeah. That looks great.
Okay, thank you.
I made some mistakes, sorry, because of the time.
Yeah, of course. But then, as I say, it's never perfect the first time round anyway. Like, how many times have you done a Gantt chart and then had to change it like 27
5 iterations.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
that's just what happens. I will make one comment, if that's okay. Be really careful the distinction between what a task is and what a deliverable is, because I think some of what you have in here is deliverables rather than pieces of work. So for example, your reporting, your task would just be project reporting, but your deliverables would be the 6 monthly reports or quarterly reports, whatever it might be. So just get clear in your head. So the way I see it is a task is a description of the piece of work, and the deliverable are the outputs and the things that result from that.
Test is the action activity you take.
Yeah.
Roads.
And deliverable is actually the result.
The result of that activity.
So it's good. Yeah, just I think be a bit mindful of that. Very easy mistake to make, I think. Very, very easy. So.
Do we have any more volunteers in the room?
We might try. We managed to put together something.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Stop sharing.
Not that good, not that.
Sasha, please stop sharing.
I like the blue one that way. That was good.
Can you see it?
No, just
Sasha
With a lot of colors.
and now we can see it. Okay.
Oh, with a lot of colors.
Nick, we already have a
Yes.
project proposal finished.
Click submit.
Yes. It's very similar to the what Sasha presented. And it has 6 work packages. So the first one is the project coordination and management. We have consortium meetings every 6 months and reporting every year. And then the second work package is the overview of the current measurement network. That is the first activity. I don't think you can read it. It's quite small. Maybe I will increase the size of the so evaluation of extreme climate conditions, drought and flooding, evaluation of quality, and then the third package is the climate and groundwater measurement data integration tool. This is a platform for data processing and platform maintenance, which is until the end of the project. So this is the task 3.2. Then the actual building of the network, which requires equipment procurement and permits, which runs from months 7, so the second year of the project, and then groundwater quality and level assessment. This uses the data obtained through the network, and it runs in the second 2/3 of the project. So second, third year. And in the end, the dissemination and outreach activities, which of course is the project visual identity, the website and social media, opening conference in the first month, and closing conference on the last month, and workshop with stakeholders at the end of the project. So basically, this is what we managed to do in this short time.
Great, thank you. I'm very conscious of time at this point because we're due to finish in the next 40 minutes, right? Am I right?
Yes, yeah, but basically we can extend it, wrap up of half an hour which was like for question and answers. And I wanted to check with you if we can run through one more example of a successful Gantt chart.
Perfect.
Okay, because our guys, can I have your attention, please? Our colleague Sneža Maletić from Department of Chemistry, who won the twinning project, is also here with us, and she's willing to share her Gantt charts, the winning one. So, Sneža, thank you. You're showing your face. Yeah, finally, face started. It's so nice to see you. Thank you so much. Could you please share your successful Gantt chart so we can have one.
Okay, I will share Gantt chart from my grant agreement, actually.
Thank you so much.
You see it?
Yes.
So unfortunately, since there was a small space here, I didn't write here the actually name of each task, but I could explain it. The work package 4 and work package 5 at the end here, actually dissemination and coordination, and of course their duration is the whole project. And the first package is actually networking and exchange of researchers. And here we have a lot of actually exchange visits. And that's why also all of these tasks are during the whole project. And we have deliverable in the like on the beginning to make the plan for these visits, and have like interim report of these visits and final report of these visits. In the work package 2 is actually workshops, and and there is the task 2.1 is workshop. I'm sorry that it isn't written here, but we didn't have space for this. So the work package 2, task 2.1 is workshops, and the task point like 2.2 is some not workshop, but actually, sorry, some schools or like workshops only for us. And like task point 2.5, it's scientific strategy. That's why it's on the end of the Gantt chart. So like for these workshops, we have again a plan for workshops, and at the end the activity related to finished workshop, what have been actually performed. The work package 3, since this project allowed us to have actually some scientific tasks, and the work package 3 is related to some small scientific projects. And here are some like specific scientific tasks related to our project. And we also here have interim report of scientific research and final actually report of performed scientific research. So, for example, I didn't put in the proposal, we have more detailed Gantt chart, but it wasn't required by the project, where we actually specified each visit is, and it's actually specified in this proposal when is planned each actual visit, the duration of the visit, and the same for workshops, when is planned, for how many people, for how many days. It is written actually in the tasks. So just the short overview of our Gantt chart.
Thank you very much. It's brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Now I can see you.
Thank you. A top tip from me, do it in Excel. Don't try and do it in a Word file. And then the thing is, you don't want it to be more than a page really in your project. So if you do it in Excel, you can paste it into your Word document as a picture as well. So that that's my top tip.
Easier.
It's easier, and you can edit it much more easily in Excel, I think.
Different colors. Yeah, so it's distinctive that each package is
should be very
package is really distinctive. Yeah. Hvala Sneži, hvala koleginicama i kolegama koji su u sobi. Idemo dalje. Claire, the floor is yours again.
Brill, can I have my presentation back on? Does anyone need a quick 5 minutes before we carry on? Oh, okay, we'll plow on through to the end. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, can you see it online?
Samo da proverim. Jel sve kolege koji su online mogu da vide?
Yep. Okay, cool. Okay, so hopefully this last bit won't take so long. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through submission checklist for each proposals. So you've got a clear idea of the types of things you need to include. And then after that, I'm going to do a little bit about working with partners, how to work with your collaborators, how to find partners. Well, not so much how to find partners, but how to manage your partners and work with them to develop your proposal. So a list of just kind of checklist points that are just useful to know. The first thing is the coordinator needs to set up the proposal on the electronic submission system, else you can't submit your proposal. And that's the coordinator's responsibility, and nobody else can do that. And don't mess this up, because you can't change a coordinator later. If you need to change a coordinator, you have to set up a whole new proposal, which is really annoying. I discovered this very recently. So make sure your coordinator is your coordinator, and that's not going to change, and then get them to set up the proposal. Once they've set up the proposal on the system, they can then add other people in from that organisation to help work on all the documents. It just needs that one person to set it up in the first place. Once all the partners are set up on the EU system, everyone that works at those partners needs to make sure they have an ECAS account, which if anyone's active in EU funding, they will have, but not everybody does. So you need to make sure they do. And also, if you're working with somebody whose organisation has not applied for EU funding before, there are some other processes that they need to go through. So just be aware that this can take some time if you're working. Most organisations around Europe now will have this set up, but there might be the occasional local authority or industry partner that's never had EU funding before. So they need to be able to set that up. So don't leave that to the last minute, is my advice. The consortium needs to have at least your 3 partners from your 3 member states, or more if the call asks for it. My advice is never just have 3, have an extra one as a spare, just in case somebody drops out, so your project's still eligible. We're having this problem a little bit now with the UK, because the UK is an associated partner, and therefore there are no longer 3 member states in the consortium. So just be very mindful of that when you're putting it together. So it's always useful to have a spare if you either 2 companies from one country, or 2 organisations from one country, or a 4th country in your partnership. So EXtremeClimTwin's got 4 countries represented by 4 partners, for example. Make sure that, I'll talk about partnerships a little bit more, but make sure that it's really clear and defined, and that you are not duplicating roles. The only duplication of roles should be, for example, the call we've talked about today. If you have 2 local authorities that are looking at their own regions, and therefore they're doing a similar role to each other, but locally, but there should be no duplication of technical roles or expertise, because it's seen through by reviewers very easily. Part B of the proposal, which is the main proposal document itself, which I'm not going to go through today. I think I've gone through it on another webinar before. It should be written very clearly, and it should be a PDF, and it should be no more than 10 megabytes in size. So I've never gone over that personally, but if you have lots of images and pictures, and it can do. And also always check your PDF before you upload it, because sometimes they can go a bit skewy when you convert them. So always do a quick double check before you upload it. Make sure the budget's been agreed by all the partners. And I personally think it's easier for the coordinator to put all the budget information onto the system, so that you know it's all correct, rather than leaving it to the individual partners to do themselves. And just make sure any other documents that are required, such as ethics, if you have ethical consideration for your project, or letters of support, like the call that we've looked at today, are also uploaded onto the system, so that you don't get kicked out for not being eligible. And the one from me is, just don't leave it till the last minute because it doesn't end very well usually. So there's a few other parts about eligibility checks and any other requirements. So applications must be complete. If it's incomplete, you're not going to get a second chance to submit it. So if it's not there, the EU aren't going to come back to you and say, oh, you missed this bit in your proposal. Can you please resubmit it with the missing attachment or whatever? That just doesn't happen. So if you miss it, that's it, tough, you're done, you're out. Which can be really frustrating if you spent a lot of time working on your proposal. It's quite nice in the UK, we're allowed to do that, aren't we? The funders come back and say, oh, you missed this, you do that. Can you fix it and send it back to us? And a lot's changed as well because they don't negotiate your projects in the same way that they used to. So whatever you've written is whatever you're expected to deliver. You can't go changing it all after award. Applications must be readable, accessible and printable. So it used to be very much that you had to write it assuming that the person reviewing it would be seeing it in black and white. So any diagrams or pictures that you put in, you should be able to make sure that if it was printed off in black and white, it's still readable and doesn't require colour. I don't know if that's so much the case anymore because everyone's reading them on screen these days, not printing them off. So I think it's less important than it used to be. But also make sure if you're putting diagrams in that have very small text in, print off the page and just check you can actually read it properly when it's printed off. You must include a plan for exploitation and dissemination of results, including communication, except for proposals that are 2 stages. You don't need to include that for the first stage. And I'm going to go over that tomorrow to give you some input into what you can put into that section. And there are usually page limits per section and per type of action. So make sure you check the page limits specifically for the proposal you're applying to. They do change depending on which one you're applying to. Some are 30 pages, some are 45 pages, the first stage of 10 pages. So just check before you start working on it ideally. Eligibility is checked by EU staff and there tend to be administrative staff. The eligible activities are the one described in the call conditions, so they're going to have a look at that and check that your project meets the scope. Minimum number of partners, we've talked about that a little bit before. And also proposals with deadlines this year and beyond, the organisation that is applying for it must have a gender equality plan in place. So, Geiger, do you want to mention what you've got in place at?
Yes, at least for University of Novi Sad, I can share the info that University of Novi Sad has an up and running gender equality plan. It's available for other institutions, colleagues online. It's important that you know where to find it and that the legal entity representatives of your institution check that option in your institutional ECAS account that you have the gender equality plan. This is very important. This is what you should do, because if you don't do that, you won't be able to sign your grant agreement, even though you get the proposal rights and funded.
The only exception is if they are a business, they don't have to have one. It's only if they're like research organisations or public bodies, they have to have one. So you will need to bear in mind that any university partners or other types of partners that you have will need to have this in place. So you might need to support them if they don't have one already. And then, as I mentioned before, there's often other criteria, such as you need a partner from India or you need social sciences. And if you don't have those, it's no good. Okay, so just make sure you check this stuff, you know, make your own checklist for your particular proposal, and just before you submit it, just make sure that everything's in there that needs to be. Okay, I'm going to work partners. So partners are essential when it comes to European and Horizon Europe proposals. If you don't have partners, you don't have a proposal. The only exception is the European Research Council, That's pretty much it. Even Marie Curie fellowships, you need a partner of a host institution. So generally you need partners. So it's really important to figure out how to work with partners, particularly because you're working with partners from across Europe. So they're different from you, they have different cultures, they have different ways of working, they have very different attitudes to deadlines, I've discovered, particularly partners in maybe Spain, they're not always so fast with deadlines. Yeah, depends how experienced they are as well. So Indian partners as well, tell them you have a deadline.
Nothing happens.
So remember, you need at least your 3 member states. So check first, because for a long time, I didn't realize Norway in Framework Programme 7 couldn't be a coordinator. And then that was a problem at one point. So, and it does change with the framework programme. So just make sure you check if you're not sure. It's always good to work with partners you've already got in your network if possible, or work with partners that are in your colleagues' networks. So for example, these guys working on EXtremeClimTwin have now got a really good network of universities that they're working with on climate change. So you can always talk to them and find out who you worked with and who they liked working with and who they didn't like working with, and then choose the good ones, obviously. And it's really important, particularly for European projects. They are so big, you really need to share the workload between the team because it's impossible for one person to do by themselves. The other thing is, not one person who's a coordinator doesn't necessarily have the technical expertise that makes it part of the work programme. So that's another reason why it's important to share the workload. Okay, but if you are the coordinator or you are supporting the coordinator or you're part of the coordinating team, you do need to take responsibility. You need to know the application process and what's required and make sure that your partners know what's expected of them when they rely on you telling them what you need. They're not just going to volunteer to do this stuff. Make an assumption that you might have to do everything and it's a bonus if you don't. That's generally how the world works. Would you say that's fair? Really clear space in your diaries, particularly in the run up to the deadline, because things happen, things can take a really long time. You might have a last minute change and it all can get very stressful. So just make sure you're not going on a trip the day before or something. I had a really bad time once. I was at a conference in London and I was trying to submit a proposal while I was there and the Wi-Fi was a bit dodgy and I had to run around somewhere to try and find the internet. It was a nightmare.
Really stressful.
Really stressful, so never do that is my advice. And yeah, commit yourself 100% to the proposal. So be very clear what your expectations of your partners are, but recognise that as the coordinator, it is your responsibility and it is your responsibility to tell your partners what you need and by when. So the best team, I think, is small. Small is beautiful. One of my favourite academics wrote this slide and I stole it because I think it's great. Small is very beautiful. You only should have the roles that you need for your project. Obviously, some projects need bigger teams, as we've discussed already, so some need smaller ones. But keep it as small as you possibly can is my advice. Big projects are very challenging to manage. And everyone wants a lot of money, you know, everyone wants a big budget. So if you have a big team, it's a lot more negotiation over how much people can have budget-wise. Pick the very best in the field, wherever they are. Obviously, you're restricted in some respects. They need to ideally be within Europe or an associated country. But do look for the best people. So, and maybe people you've published with, people you hold in very high regard. If you are coordinating, partners recognise that actually you're doing most of the hard work and they're just contributing a bit. So you're more likely to get some really high profile people agree to be part of your project than if they were leading it themselves. Work only with the committed. I feel very strongly about this. If somebody during your proposal is not giving you what you need, is not contributing, is not sending you stuff by the deadlines you've given them, you need to kind of kindly get rid of them, because if they're not doing it at the proposal stage and they're not helping you, you've got to think to yourself, what are they going to be like on the project? They're going to be horrific to work with. They're not going to do anything that you ask of them. They're going to be late with everything, and that can cause really big problems with your reporting. So if people really aren't delivering, don't be afraid to kind of have a bit of a chat and maybe remove them from the team. I've mentioned about duplication of roles, and then be clear. What do you need from who? By when, and be really strict with the deadline and chase them as well. Like put reminders in your calendar. I need to chase them at their deadlines tomorrow or next week. And as I say, sideline and uncommitted, the people that don't rock up and the people that aren't delivering, because they're just going to be really difficult to work with later. So here's a warning. And I've seen this done and it was awful. So don't bring together a cast of thousands and hope that it's going to work out, because once you get some people involved, it's really hard to get rid of them sometimes. And dead weight's disaster, because you're spending money on someone who's just not going to do anything on the project, and then you're going to end up doing all the work yourself, and that's just not going to end very well. So yeah, that's my advice there. So be strategic, think about who you need on your project before you start contacting people. Once you have a phone call with someone or an email, we're thinking about doing this bid, would you be interested? They think they're in, that's like it, to that point, they think they're partner in your project. So work together as a team. So once you've got your partnership, or at least your core partnership together, you know, brainstorm, think about your concept. So you guys have come up with some good stuff today, but you haven't had your input from some of the partners who might have some different insights or some different experience. So get them to contribute as well. Develop it, evolve it, get it as good as it can be, really polished. Fill the niche skills gaps. So, okay, we need someone who's got some very specific expertise in climate data or soil or whatever it might be. And make sure you get those people in there. And think about your main stakeholders and partners. So I'm going to talk about stakeholders and things tomorrow when we talk about dissemination, because those stakeholders are really important. But they can also provide input into your proposal as well, particularly if they're people that you've worked with before. Okay, so manage firmly. This is your job as coordinator. Yeah. You have to be really unpopular for a bit. You'll be popular again if you win the grant, it's fine. You have to be really bossy. And it's not about making friends at this point, right? It's about getting the work done. So it's your name, your vision, and your project. If you're the principal investigator, the coordinator of a project, it's you, it's your name that's going to be on everything. It's your reputation. So make sure that you take that responsibility as well. Communicating clearly and regularly. I want what by when, but also being very clear what you want. Not, I want you to write your work package, because they're just going to go off and write something that might not be what you're expecting. So make sure you're talking to them regularly and discussing what might be in their work package before they go off and do it with the rest of the team. Version control. This is the bane of my life. So especially when people don't use track changes. So be very clear. Please use track changes if you're making any changes. If you're the coordinator, you keep the master document, and then you're the one that can put all the changes in, because I've had horrific cases where I think, oh, that's fine. And then I realise how much somebody's changed something, and then another person's edited the old document, and it's just a nightmare. So that's something I really strongly recommend, and keep that version. Don't put it on a Google Drive and expect everyone to edit it, which doesn't end well. Maybe at the end, once you've got a last version, but really make sure you've got good, strong document control. Hold meetings and use Skype, Zoom, conference calls regularly. I think the world's changed in that respect now. I think it's video calling so easy now compared to what it used to be. It's made all these things a lot easier. And step in when necessary to make things happen. So yeah, just be as bossy as you need to be, you know. So I want to mention about communication as well. So you've got to communicate effectively, as I've mentioned, and there are a number of tools that we can use for this. I've missed a few off here actually. So you've got online discussions via kind of Zoom, Teams, Skype, whatever it is that you decide to use. But there's also online chat things as well, like Trello has been really useful for me before, where you have to-do lists and you like allocate them to people. That can be effective. I know some people really like Slack as well, kind of distributing work, and it just keeps everything out of your email, which can sometimes be easier because it's all in one place rather than getting lost in your inbox, which is.
Yeah, we use it in a
We
cost
tried
action.
Trello, but it didn't really work out. Yeah, it was another communication tool you needed to attend to. It was easier to switch back to emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we use it for cost action because there's a lot of partners and a lot of communication, so it's easier, yeah, to follow up, not to overload your emails.
But different things work for different projects, so try things out and see what works for you. Regular emails distributing tasks and checking how people are going. Assigning leadership to work package leaders. So if you know who's leading a work package, it's their responsibility to get it written with the people that are working on it. And then it's your responsibility as coordinator to kind of bring it all together. You need to build contingency into your deadlines to account for any illness or any other issues. So my experience of working with academics that I work with is that deadlines, but they often ask for extensions. So I always ask for things a week before I actually need them to make sure that I've got them for when I'm going to work on it. So that works quite well. Don't tell them that's what you're doing. But it works really well. And then finally, if you can manage to find a budget or any funds to actually meet in person, to actually have a day or a few days focused on your proposal development, I think it's really good to do. As I say, it's different now because you've got rooms like this where you can sort of have a bit more interaction, but it's always, I mean, you guys were great today in person talking to each other, and you just don't get that online in the same way. So I do believe in the in-person side of things. Okay, and that is me done, finished talking.
All right.
So there you go. So we can probably stop sharing that now.
Yeah, you did.